Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Friday night. Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. Tonight, we're going back to the 80s. We are going back in time to when we had large racks of giant gear. And as you can see, we've got some awesome guests with us who have large racks. Lots of large racks. Tonight, we're joined by Michael Nielsen and Michael Toren. And to make it easy on us, I'm going to be referring to them by their last names, Nielsen and Toren. So, guys, thanks for joining. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back. Happy.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
It could have been just Michael or Mike.
I think I get confused.
Is that too confusing? Halfway through, you'd be doing the opposite.
Yeah, especially with after a couple of these, I won't. It'll be much easier to say Toren Nielsen.
And the drink of choice today for at least two of us would be Clase Azul Tequila.
Ooh,
the best, simply the best.
Have to try it.
And unfortunately, I only have this one glass though. So after that, it goes to Belgian beer.
So you're just drinking that
100 of tequila.
Are you both just drinking that straight tequila?
Yes.
Yeah, I put a little ice in it.
Okay, see a little ice.
No, I don't even do that. That's training wheels.
And Toren, what are you drinking?
So I'm polishing off little Alice in Chains whiskey we got going on here.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm gonna move on to something else.
My bottle was gone long ago.
Well, you still have the bottle. You mean the alcohol's gone?
Oh, actually, you know what? I kept the bottle forever, and then I finally threw the bottle out too. It's like you want to save it, and you're like, yeah, well,
I'll get another one.
I'll get another one. Yeah.
Well, that's a tough thing, is you can't find that. That was like a limited release, actually.
Yeah, but you said they released more again.
Oh, they did. Awesome. Then I'm on board.
Didn't you tell me that?
I did. I texted and I actually bought 3 bottles because.
Oh.
And then I got this weird email back that said, you know what? No, we don't have it.
Oh, shoot.
So who knows?
Maybe I shouldn't have thrown the bottle out.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, well. Well, that's cool. I'm finishing off. If anybody who watches our show religiously would know that I started this bottle back when we had George Metropolis on, probably like episode 3. So 90 episodes ago, I will probably finish this bottle tonight. So maybe.
So that goes to show you how
big a drinker I am.
Big a drinker Mark is, yeah.
But
at least for the hard stuff.
It's been a big week. It's been a crazy week. So I am so into this discussion, I have to tell you guys, because I have been rack envy.
You have a nice little rack back there, I could see.
Yeah, a little bit. That's my PV power amp for my wet dry wet, and just a power strip. I've dabbled a little bit to my left over here. I have the Fryette power station with the Synergy, and also the aux. So I'm dabbling, but we'll get into this. I think for people who for beginner entry level rack stuff, I think that would be cool to talk about at some point. But I'd first like to just zone in on. I'm going to go into Toren's room and then in Nielsen's room quickly, just to show what you guys have, because it's quite a collection. I mean, really, I love it. So first, sorry.
See, you got confused already.
I am confused. Let's go to Nielsen first. So, do we have a full picture of what you have here?
What wrong way? A lot of this stuff is like studio mixing stuff. I don't know if it'll work if I'm back here. So this is kind of effects down here, where I've got the stupid expensive studio reverbs, like the Bricasti, and a dual engine Lexicon PCM96, as well as a PCM70 right there. there. It's easier to do that way. And then I have a PCM41 and a 42. I never managed to get a pair of them, but it kind of works. I could either print them individually to get a stereo pair, or it works nicely just having, if I'm going to go stereo with it, just having one of each. They're slightly different sounding, ever so slightly. The center rack over here is sort of like a lot of my mastering stuff. Well, it's like, here's the API preamps, which is for recording. My APIs and my overstayer preamps. I have 4 mics set up on my cabs, and they get routed into this little mixer right there. So I could record one channel and blend, which is really nicely. And then I have the spillover rack right here in the back. That's, you can see the fish hiding there, the Bogner fish. That's Michael Toren's 2290, which I'm borrowing. And then there's a SDE3000, a pair of those, and the SRV2000, the Roland stuff. Let's see, SPX 90's tucked away back there. And then this is kind of my working rack of stuff. It's always getting swapped in and swapped out. I'll have it like perfectly wired, and then the next day it's like, no, everything comes out.
So you got the H3000 there. You've got the ADA MP1.
Yeah, so the H3000 is Toren's. The MP1 sticks around most of the time because I just like to see it. It makes me happy. The VHT 2150 is always in there. That's probably my favorite power amp, and it's so heavy you can't really get it out anyway.
Right.
And then preamps come and go and inside there, and then my power station. I've got next to that, where it starts going over here, is the rack heads. Here, I'll do this. And I'll swap heads out. I'll either have the BE100 or the Jake head in there. I've got little guys in there sometimes. Sometimes I'll have the Soldano, or I'll bring in my Fender Bassman, like a 60s blackface Bassman head, which is amazing sounding. And I just got a Synergy inside the desk, which I don't know if you can see the front. Sorry if I make you. There's little racks here. So I have an Eclipse 2290, and the other side is like mixing stuff, and a DBX. Sorry. And inside my live room, there's another rack just full of all the spillover stuff of, like, I have a Demeter preamp and the Morin preamp and stuff that's like when it's coming in and out. I have like 3 broken BBE sonic maximizers in that rack and all kinds of junk.
Okay, now you called it Demeter. I call it Demeter. And
Demeter.
How do you say it? Demeter?
Yeah, just one more thing you didn't quite get right.
All right.
But Dave, you could settle this one. Is it Eventide or Eventide?
Oh boy,
I say Eventide. So it's
I
gotta
say
be wrong.
Eventide. I've always said Eventide. I could be wrong.
I say Eventide, but I got lit up on my last Eventide videos, so now I'm trying to change.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's tomato,
Well, quite a room there. Nielsen, Michael Nielsen, and Michael Toren. That's quite a spectacle right there.
This is insanity. It is.
Michael Toren wins, by the way.
Yeah,
He does win.
I have a
He does
problem.
win.
I have a serious problem.
Hi, I'm Michael Toren, and I have a severe gear problem.
Toren needs to take a picture of that so that we could have it in our Zoom background, so everyone could have that in the Zoom background.
That's so awesome.
Well, yeah, while you were going through Michael Nielsen's rig, I was rolling the B rack out so you can get it on without having to do the camera tweak. So here's all the Mesas you could ever own except for the V Twin.
Right. You don't have the Rackmount V Twin.
I don't. I just got the Triaxis, and I've had the rest of them for a bit. And actually, the cool thing is Nielsen did a video where he did the quad, his Triaxis, and his studio, which made me buy a studio because that's an awesome preamp. And God, the tones he was getting were insane. They were incredible.
I'm kind of like, of the Mesa preamps, I think my favorite is the quad. Actually, if I had to pick, the studio's great. There were a couple revisions on the studio, from what I understand. Some of them sounded better than others.
I didn't know
On the dirty side. I used to have a studio though for a little while. I had, but I used it only for the clean channel.
I got my studio from John Bingham. That's how I met him in a back alley. I had a studio for a little while, and I was like, nah, I never plugged it in really. And I got rid of it, and then I got it again, and I met him. And now he works at Boutique or Friedman, somewhere in between.
Right.
Boutique. For everyone, for all the brands.
I knew it would happen. Quentin James there in the chat saying this is a green screen.
Yeah, no, it's not.
There's $10,000 worth of knobs just in that picture.
Now there's some of those Mesa preamps I've never heard. Well, actually, there's one that there's two, but you don't have the other one. I've never heard the V Twin in a rack mount format. Pedal, sure. And I've never heard, what is that, the Formula or something?
Yeah,
I keep going to Michael Nielsen. Why do I keep doing that? I'm sorry. Never seen one in all my days at all, other than in a picture. Really? Wow.
Never. And in fact, the rectifier preamp too, hardly ever. Maybe once.
I actually like the Ricto better than I like the Formula. Formula's got a pretty good clean tone though. It's not studio level clean tone, but it's really nice.
Right.
But I don't really like the drive channel though.
And when did these come out?
That's a good question.
Well, the Recto was 90s, right?
Right.
I think that even came out. That was way later than the amps. The Formula, I have no idea. The Triaxis, well, maybe should never have come out.
Do you really just like everything about it?
I pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
The Triaxis, I don't care for at all. Never have. It's noisy as hell. It's got all sorts of issues with hum and noise. You have to sit there and spin the transformer in them to get them to kind of hum cancel a little bit. It was nothing but a pain in my ass when I put rigs together with them.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you could coax a Mesa sound out of them, sure.
Yeah.
But wasn't my favorite. No, I mean, I'd take the Studio or the Quad over that. I mean, it was the function. The idea was cool. Just my comment.
No, it's valid.
I never liked any Mesa, so there you go. So I still don't really care for any of them. It's not my thing.
Right.
It's got
Mark Lavinish.
Yeah. I mean, maybe an honorable mention for the 2C plus. You know.
So love my BEBB Synergy module. Awesome. Thoughts on using an audiophile power amp a la Jerry Garcia? Is it much different than using a guitar power amp?
I wouldn't do that. Yes, it's very different. Very, very, very different. If you plug their preamp into, say, I don't know, pick some sort of solid state power amp, you will notice it doesn't react the same way at all. It a lot of times it's kind of veiled and kind of dark sounding. Unless there's a few exceptions. Like, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about. Audiophile.
Well, I was about to say, like, I think audiophile, I was thinking more like Macintosh or like some high end.
Yeah. Well, a Macintosh might be okay because that's tubes.
Right.
Like
Wasn't that the old thing with White Lion, Vito Bratta, and Michael Wagner? It was Macintosh power amps with the ADA.
Yeah. And the H&H, like when I was...
That's the honorable mention.
There you go. Because I've heard those on NS10s, and it sounds great, and it's a great...
H&H is a very rare exception. I think it's a great sound. You did a little power amp shootout.
Yeah, pretty
recently in videos. And I loved how the H&H sounded in that shootout.
Yeah, it's good.
There was something about that. So like growing up, coming a little background is, when I started doing rack systems and things for people, this was probably around 1989. So I kind of lived through the heyday of them.
I was going to say that's the height of racks, right?
Yeah,
there.
pretty much the height of the most technological era of the rack, and that lasted still into early 90s. So there was a good number of years there. And, you know, man, there's something about the Soldano preamp into the H&H power amp. I mean, that is a sound.
Which Soldano?
The X88.
Oh, okay.
Also, my probably preference over the X99, even though the X99 was cool because it moves. But it sounds a little, I don't know about me, but it always sounded a little bit muddier.
Really?
Yeah.
I sort of found the difference, at least between mine. I wonder if mine needs some new tubes, because comparing my 88 to Toren's 99, the 99 was sharper for sure, a little more high def, like the SLO head. And my 88 was definitely more vintage sounding and roundy. Didn't have kind of the bite. But I don't notice that unless I'm comparing it. That's why I gave all that shit back to Mike.
It was, yeah, and it was low. It was an X88 sounds different than the head. There's a couple little differences in the preamp section of that than, say, the SLO channel in the head. The X99, it really wasn't the top end for me. It was the low end. It was always a little mushy on the low end, not how bright it was. But I mean, that could just be like, I don't know. It could be just, you know, they used a bigger coupling cap somewhere or something. You know, I've never got to see many of them, to be honest. There weren't that many that got used in racks. Really? At least not with me at all. Almost none. 88s? The 99s.
Oh, the 99s. Yeah, that seemed like it came out. Do you remember how much that was when that came out? That was like really expensive, wasn't it? Beyond.
Never sold any of them, hardly. Nothing.
Wow.
Zero. Never saw them in racks ever. It was all the 88s. By then, everyone had the 88, so it was like,
yeah.
Right.
It's a cool preamp. I mean, the motorized pots alone.
Oh, it's super cool.
Because you look at it now. I mean, Hook came out with a head recently that had motorized pots, and everyone thought it was the groundbreaking thing. I'm like, wait a minute. In the 90s, we had an X99 that would do it, and then there was a Yamaha pre that did it later in between. So, I mean,
I don't remember that one.
It was a solid state one. It wasn't a tube one. It was like a DG. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
I think those are modelers, the Yamahas.
It was a modeler. Yeah, it wasn't a tube amp. But this was the only tube amp that I know of that had that type of interface. And it sounded really great as a selling feature because, I mean, you had 99 presets and it was all MIDI. So you could have, 10 different cleans, 10 different crunches, 10 different overdrives with bright, without bright. I mean, there was so much scalability in that preamp. That's what blows my mind. I think what happened is it was just too expensive. So people went to 88 and said, hey, I just need three channels. We're done. And then went from there.
Yeah, going back to that time, you talk about the preamps that were popular. I mean, obviously there was like commercially popular. Well, there was popular with like the pros and studio guys, and then there was also commercially popular with the average user. So the average user, obviously the ADA was a big popular preamp. They sold gazillions of those at the time, You didn't see those too much other than the few like rock, hair metal touring guys that used that. You didn't see them too much. You never saw them for the studio guys. So pretty much that was the X88, the CAE preamp, which came later, the Bogner Fish preamp, and the Egnator preamp. Those were, at least in California, those were the king of the hill.
You didn't see like Mesa Quad preamps everywhere?
Early. So that's almost before Quad came out. When did that come out? That came out when in the 80s?
It was really close to like 87-ish. The Studio and the Quad came out around the same time.
So you would see a lot of guys using the studio preamp. Well, early on, you saw some quad preamps. They were popular. A lot of guys were slaving boogie heads into their racks. Later, they were slaving things like Marshalls and stuff, and then using like the studio preamp for the clean sound.
Mm-hmm.
So they would use a slaved Marshall or amp of choice. Well, generally, it was an old Marshall, and then the studio for just the pristine studio kind of clean stuff.
Mm.
Stretching my memory back now. It's like, I haven't thought about this stuff since then.
Well, I have a question about when you would build people's racks. So like someone comes into you and says, like, I'm a studio guitar player. Do they come in with the gear first of all? Or do they say, I need the thing that like Huff has and Michael Thompson has? Like,
yeah, I mean, well, at that point in time, it depends. It depends on who they were, and it depends on what there was someone that was trying to emulate the studio guys, and then there was people that are trying to just emulate the rock guys, so they were distinctly a little different.
would they typically whatever side, would they come in with their own gear, or is it sort of like they come in and you're like, here's the menu, what would you like?
Right, here's the menu.
Well, at that point in time, I was working. Well, originally I started working for Andy Brower Studio Rentals, which did cartage and everything for every studio guitar player known to mankind. Dan Huff and David Williams and Michael Landau and Steve Lukather and all these people. And then that later transitioned into Andy being partners with Greg Bales in the California version of Making Music, which was a store out of Chicago. So we sold high-end gear. That's what we did. So I mean, I would see what was being, what we'd sell and what we'd market, and we were, Soldano dealers, and we were involved with Bogner from the very beginning. We were involved with, I watched Stevie Fryette develop all his early products with the VHT 2150, the Pitbull amps. I mean, I saw the prototypes, saw the prototype Bogner preamps, the crazy
ones.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting time because this was like the heyday of high-end gear, boutique gear, really. I mean, really was. I mean, it was crazy. It was interesting. But, for the studio guys, pretty much, if it wasn't a Boogie, it was the Soldano X88 or the Egnator preamp, actually, more so than anything else. More rock guys gravitated towards the Bogner preamp. So that the later, like Jerry Cantrell and stuff like that.
So in terms of the effects stuff, like how much programming do you do where you're like, all right, I put in your Lexicon and your Rocktron or whatever you're going to fill it up with. Do you say, okay, here's your 10 patches, or are you like, go with God, good luck? And then
well, no, you would generally finish the rig, and then you'd have to show them how to use it first off and how to program everything. So it depends on who it depends. It still depends on who you're dealing with. Like sometimes you sit there and you try to explain stuff as childlike as possible to people, just like, okay, you push this button and then you push this button and you push this button. And when you see that blank look on their face after you're done talking, then you're in trouble, because they just didn't get anything you just said, even though you really tried to put it simple, so then you go over it again and again and again, and then you make them do it. And so they can have real time, it's easier these days, because now to show someone how to do it, what I'll do is I'll make them a video. I'll
Maybe
make a
watch it again and
video.
again.
Here's
Right.
what you do. Here's you do. You want to program a preset, you hit the preset, you do this, blah, 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 blah. You make the phone video, and then you give it to them once, and they can watch it as many times as they need to.
I mean, think about it.
It works great now. It was a lot easier now.
Lukather had Bradshaw touring with him just to make sure it worked, right?
Well, let me tell you. Yes, exactly. But let me tell you. I mean, Steve, we used to cart Steve around. Steve knew enough, maybe, on where to plug the guitar into the rig. He didn't. I mean, he knew his way around the effects a little bit, changing some stuff, but most of the stuff was pretty stock presets that he used all the time. So he wasn't the real tone hands-on guy. You know, it was kind of like you gave him something that sounded great, and that's what he went with.
Exactly. Oh, it sounds great. Good.
Yeah,
Leave it there. Right.
But I'm telling you, his rig, and I carted it around many times for many years. His rig with the original prototype Soldano preamp, the black-faced one, with all his effects into an H&H power amp with two 4x12 cabinets with vintage 30s, sounded like God. I mean, it just, and it was loud, and he played it loud, and it was great. It's a little sad when he moved away from that rig, because that rig just, I mean, shouldn't have moved away. It was great. You know?
Wild. Hey, let me get to a couple of super chats here because I don't want to miss them. Rummy, thanks for the super chat. Yay or nay, MXR digital timeline time delay rack. Digital time delay rack.
Now you're going back to the 70s almost, I think. So if you're talking about the single space ones or the older blue faced dual space ones, because the old, those sound great. They have a sound, and they're pretty grungy, but they have a really cool sound.
And the value of that piece just went up 100%.
Now you won't be able to find them.
Exactly. Well, that was
quick, Michael, quick. If you've never played with one, though, it's worth a play because it's pretty neat sounding.
That's cool.
Those were used early on by Eddie too.
Oh man, 200%.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mark
Not way back, but like in the era. Well, was it maybe around? I can't remember what era. 84-ish era, I think, or somewhere in there.
God, and I thought I was cool. I just picked up two TC delays here. I got a 1280 and a 1380. And then you now give me something else to search for.
Well, here, I'll tell you this. I don't even know what those are. I've never seen them in the guitar rack.
Okay, that's not a good sign for guitar.
Well, that must be a PA alignment kind of delay or something.
Well, what's interesting about these is I got them because, you know, I'm on a bunch of different forums looking at gear, just like everybody else, just looking at gear. And somebody brought one up, and I was like, you know, that's really interesting. Let me take a look at that. And then I got it, and I look at the back of it, and there's no quarter-inch inputs. It's all XLR.
Yeah, no, it was designed for, it was the time alignment, I'm pretty sure, is what those are used for. It probably has no repeats either.
There's no dry signal, I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's what it was used for, time alignment.
Yeah, so that now I got to find, well, the good news about it is multi-channel, so I can have one channel be dry, and the other channel be the repeats, or, you know.
But does it have repeats is the question.
Oh,
does it have repeats?
Yeah, it has repeats.
Oh, it does.
Like one of them has 3 channels. You can do 3 simultaneous channels, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely designed for some sort of time alignment thing for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Mark's question was earlier, his power amp is a tube power amp, an audiophile tube amp. Will it compress in a similar manner? Are the design circuits comparable?
Well, here's the question. Are you pushing it enough to make it compress? So, I mean, most tube power amps probably aren't even getting pushed loud enough for it to do anything at all. You know, like there's just some coloration to the actual tube power amp circuit, but you're not driving it into distortion, so to speak, which is where you get compression. Unless you're playing really loud, maybe. Hard to say. hard to say, and maybe it could sound really super cool. I don't know what you're using exactly, so
I'd say try it. If it sounds good, use it.
That's definitely my motto.
That's a really good topic though, because I get asked a lot because people see this behemoth behind me, and they ask me which power amp are you playing through, and I have actually eight stereo power amps back here, and people, well, what is the best one? I mean, what separates one from another? I mean, it's not just power tubes. It could be I think you hit on the nail on the head by saying that it's flavoring. Like all the VHTs have a flavor to them that's unique to VHT. All the Mesas have a flavor that's unique to Mesa. So if you like that flavor, that's the thing you need to look at. But it's hard to tell. That's the hardest part about this whole gear thing.
It's sort of a filter, all the different power amps are sort of a filter. And you know what the thing was at the time when we were doing these racks, what we really wanted was in a 4-space, 2-space something. We just wanted 2 Marshall power sections in a box. That's what we really wanted. And no one ever did it. I mean, Marshall did a power amp, but they didn't do it like the power amp out of one of their amps. I mean, probably the closest one to it was the one Bruce did for Randall. And that still was a little different.
Is that the RT50?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one of those. Yeah.
The ones we tended. There was some that we liked a lot though. There was PV made a few for a while that were really good. The classic 5050 was a great one with EL84s.
Okay.
That's a great sounding power amp. There was a little mod you could do to like kind of tame a little of the top end in it. Really simple. And the classic 120 was actually good too. That was actually the power section out of 2 of their 100-watt heads at the time, generally coming with Sylvania 6L6s. So that would have been the power section out of the VTM or I think that era sort of, or the Butcher,
Oh wow. Dave, what is your opinion of the Dual 75 that's up there? I bought that because it can do 4 different power tubes, and you could change it. Yeah.
It was never used. I remember it never ever once got used in a rig ever.
Oh God.
I'm sorry. I'm going to bust your bubble on a few things.
you feel free, flame away.
I'm going to bust your bubble on a few things. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't decent. I'm sure it was decent. I mean, I know those era amps and stuff, they were decent, the good transformers and, basic good design. But no one once ever, I'm sure there's some people that used it, but obviously they sold some, but no one I know or any rig I've ever done.
Okay.
So.
Oh, well. Doesn't mean it doesn't sound good.
We can go down the list. Let's go down the list of your power amps.
We can do that. I mean, the one thing I was going to say is that's the game for all of us. I mean, anybody in the gear world is, does A sound better than B? And we're all in this chase for tone. All right, what is this? Which is the reason why you see this craziness behind me. It's kind of like, all right, well, what does that sound like versus that? What does this sound like versus this? And a lot of us will buy something, play it for a while, then sell it. And then buy something else, play that for a while,
right?
And then rebuy the thing we just sold, go back to it, and then that cycle that happens. And that's one of the reasons why you see stuff still here. Is that it's like, wait a minute, if I get rid of this, I'll never know what this is versus that, and then go back and forth. And that's the beauty of what I've got going on. But I mean that's the quest, really.
Madness.
Yeah, that's the madness. I mean,
or the sickness. One of the two.
Well, I love the
reverb and eBay going. That's what we do. But yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, I go through them. I mean, I've got.
Well, I think it's really cool because you've collected all these things and they don't exist anymore. It's some of this stuff's really hard to find, man. I mean,
Well, I have a question about that too. I mean, like for instance, I just picked up a LHG.
Where did it all go?
It's in someone's storage space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some rare stuff that I picked up, just like an LAG Spitfire, which allegedly was a Bogner designed preamp back in the late 80s, early 90s, and the only one I could find was in France. So it's EU voltage. It's coming in. It was at a price I couldn't resist. And I'm going to try to convert that.
I mean, lag, like LAG?
Yeah.
So that wasn't that a guitar company?
It could be.
Originally, yeah, lag guitars. I'm pretty sure I remember them.
Yeah,
they tried to make a push here at some point.
Yeah, they made a single channel preamp, a 2-channel preamp. So I've got one coming in from France, but I got to convert that to US voltage. So
if it's possible.
There is that. Well, I got lucky on the Stevens brick that Nielsen did a good video on. That one was actually converted to US already, and I got it from the UK, and he shipped it over, and it was already converted. So it is what it was going to be. This one I'm going to have to convert, so it'll be interesting. But yeah, I mean to go on the Odyssey. I mean I've got a Marshall 2020, which is EL84s.
That's a pretty cool amp, actually.
Except for you don't have volume knobs for 2 channels. You have one volume knob. So,
well, I mean, it was designed for a stereo rig at the time.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but this is all mono. So
yeah.
And then you got a 9100, which is the 50-watt version. They made 5081s, so I got that.
Yeah. Don't love the Marshall power amp. It's okay. It's decent.
So below that, I've got a 2150, but this is an early one with 6550s. Nielsen's 2150 is actually KT88s. So there's a difference there.
Yeah, well, is that one that has, how early is that one? Does it have the level switch near the volume pots?
That is a good question.
Does yours have the level switch near the volume pots?
Are you talking about the VHT?
Yeah.
No, it does not.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. It wasn't near the volume pots. I'm sorry. It's been a long time. There was some sort of voicing switch on the front.
No, mine's on the back.
Oh, really?
There's a voicing switch on the back, or is that a level switch?
It's both. Hang on, I'm gonna go peek.
So if the power amp has just, I called 3 controls across the front on each side, and that's it, then it is a pretty early one.
Okay.
And the early ones originally came with GE 6550s, and they ran those very, very hot. So I think the design was later changed a little bit to be able to use more modern tubes after those went away.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The really early ones sounded super cool.
So that'd be interesting to compare this guy versus, say, Nielsen's with the.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see closer. Here's the thing: like you guys are jogging some of my memory, and some of this, what I'm saying, might be slightly incorrect. So don't hold me to this.
Steve aged mine because I brought it in the other day. It was so old that the impedance switch, which is a plastic like pot you have to stick a screwdriver in and like click over, it just disintegrated like completely.
Oh,
they last 25 years. And then
so from 150, I just picked up a classic, the other side of the room.
What's in the bottom?
So below that is a 252 VHT.
That's a great amp. That's maybe one of my favorites actually by him.
And then, but you can't see. In fact,
you have a classic.
I have a classic. Yeah, we'll swing around here. We'll go. There's the classic with 2 matchlesses.
Super nice.
Oh wow.
And then back here, looking down. Well, classic's cool because it's EL84s, right? Versus
no, classic is EL34s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then down below, I've got a couple of Mesa pre's. I've got a 290, and then a 5050.
Yeah, actually, both those are pretty good. I actually would say that those are the 2 best of the Mesa power amps. The 295 and the 395 and the, was there another one?
295,
395.
About the Tragedy 500.
Oh yeah, yeah, that one too. So All of those were a little odd sounding, not the greatest choice. Although they were popular for a while, because at the time, there wasn't much else going on. They did a pretty decent job on the 290, and then the 5050 actually sounded pretty good. In fact, you can mod it to have 6550s, and then it sounded really cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah. Boy, I just pulled that out of the back of my head. I remember doing it, but
that's awesome.
How I don't remember, but I do remember doing it. And I remember it being cool.
Well, that means 50/50 or 50/50s have just gone through the roof.
But what you don't have, okay, see here, you're missing some things.
There's one right here that's a 2020. So I have the Mesa 2020 right there. That's the EL84 version.
Now what you don't have is you don't have an H&H.
Well,
yeah, let me tell you the story on the H&H. I'm laying in bed and Toren texts me. He goes, because I have an H&H alert on Reverb.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Mike finds things like that. And he goes, bling, hey, you think this is a good deal? And I was like, purchased. Yes, it's a good deal.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
I mean, that could be another topic right there of how I find gear.
and then, Michael buys it.
Yeah. But mostly I just didn't want someone else to snipe it while we were talking. So
actually, the H&H that he has, I have dibs on if he ever wants to sell it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's how that goes. But yeah, trust me, I saw it first and said, hey, do you know? And then
yeah, you need H&H. Wait, what else was I going to say with that? H&H would be good.
Moss valve.
Oh,
actually, Moss valve was a good amp.
This is the problem. I have a 952, but it's not in any of the racks. It's actually in storage.
Moss valve was a good amp. Sounded good.
Well, what was crazy is some of this power amp odyssey that I went on was because Nielsen did the video. One preamp, 4 power amps. How long was that ago? And then he did the Moss valve, he did the 290, he did the 2150, and then I missed it. Oh, and then I missed that one. That one actually is right here.
Is it Rivera there?
There's a Lee Jackson S.
Oh, that's a great preamp. That's a great power amp.
Yes, that's the best solid state power amp I've ever played.
It's loud as balls. It's so loud.
Really.
It sounds fantastic. I have 2 of them.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
it's really good sounding. It doesn't necessarily sound like a solid state amp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I think either I read it or when you had him on Tone Talk, he talked about how he actually introduced harmonic distortion into the amp to get it to have that tube feel.
Yeah, and it really, really is super good. And like I said, I have 2. I thought it was super cool because it was a great sounding solid state amp. It had no fan, and it was one's rack space.
Well, and the sad story is that's the second one I bought. The sad story is the first one I bought didn't work out of the box. One of the casualties of eBay. You buy it, you get it, you test it, and
you can fix them. Nothing crazy in there.
Really? All right. Well, that was early on in this odyssey, and I just said, you know what? I'm sending this back. Let me find another one. And I was
oh boy.
actually, another preamp we have. Both Mike and I, or Nielsen and I, have the GP1000s too. And apparently there was 2 versions of those. There was a Marshall and a Fender version.
Yeah, the Fender version is not my favorite. Well, actually, you know what's really weird I don't understand about that preamp. I think both architectures are exactly the same, just one has more gain than the other. But really, it's a Fender style front end with gain after. So it's more Mesa Boogie in nature, as opposed to all his amps, which are more Marshall in nature. So I never quite understood why he did that in the preamp.
And the preamp, I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's like a high gain preamp. It's
not
really
at all
low gain.
Yeah.
For a preamp, it's maybe like JCM 800 level distortion.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, it's not high gain at all. In fact, a lot of his amp mods aren't that high of gain either. So,
Interesting.
Actually, later on when he moved to like sort of Ampeg era and stuff, he started changing how he did things to what we consider more of a normal, modern way of doing gain, and those sounded better. Yeah.
Wow.
Like the Ampeg version of his amps, I thought. They fell apart, but they sounded okay.
Hey, Jay Custom, thanks for the super chat. What do you guys think of the ADA MP1 versus the MP2? Go.
I don't recall ever putting an MP2 in a rig.
Oh, wow.
So mostly the MP1s. I recall doing that. The budget rig was the MP1 and the Alesis Quadraverb.
Oh, God.
And some sort of power amp, depends. That was the budget rig. The Quadraverb is not worth collecting. So
I'll go on record.
don't run those prices up.
It's I had a Quadraverb when I was 17 and I had it for like 10 years. None of the effects in it are particularly good, but it will do 4.
It will do 4.
And
Yeah. Or really bad effects at one time.
I'm gonna go on record and say that the first effects rack unit I had was a Quadraverb. It now sits in Robert Baker's rack in his studio because I gave it to him. And he's in the chat, so he can flame me if he wants.
Oh, yeah. How's that sounding, Robert?
But that's
He says he's here for the racks.
anyone interested in the MP2, check out Leon Todd's videos. He just did an MP2 video. I think I asked him that last night or yesterday, and he said that the MP1 was like, what did he say, 80s, and the MP2 was early 90s, essentially.
I didn't see many of them, so I don't think I ever saw any of them, so that says something. I think maybe.
Did the MP2 look like the MP1, like physically?
Kinda. More. It was like smaller buttons and a couple more knobs, and
I don't think I've ever seen one.
And then they did an amp, which I think tanked because it
They
still
did
had
cabinets, and they did.
Have you ever heard their power amp, Dave?
I remember it. I probably did, but not. It was not memorable.
I didn't hear good things about it. But.
So it didn't get used, and it was not memorable to me. So, yeah. Well, then we go into God. You have every preamp known to mankind over there.
There's a couple that I'm missing, but yeah, I've covered most of the bases. Like
probably the rarest one that you're going to be missing, or maybe the hardest to get, is going to be the Climax preamp.
Yes, there's one on my list right there.
What is that?
I think he was German.
German, definitely.
I remember he made a preamp, a 3-channel preamp. I put it in a rig. We had it at Making Music. I put it in a rig for studio guitar player out of Nashville, Brent Rowan, who was at the time was a huge studio guitar player. And as far as I know, last time I talked to him briefly, he still has it.
Wow.
Maybe we can talk him out of it if we can get in touch with him. And it was a pretty cool sounding preamp, if I recall, although it's a little foggy what it actually sounded like.
The one that I want to get out of somebody's hands is the Badcat one. Apparently there's 2 of them. There's one that's owned by a guy that's over in the gear page, and then there's one opened by John. And if we get our hands on one of those, I'd be a happy guy.
Well, here's the interesting thing also. So I'm going to lump the Badcat in with the Matchless, to the preamps from the Matchless.
Oh, yeah.
Never once, ever did those go in any rigs.
No, man.
Billy Corgan. He's the only one I've seen.
Did he use one once?
Yeah, he used one. Yeah, he sold 2 of them.
with
That
the bunch of
Matchless
fuzz
sounds
pedals, right?
fantastic.
Yeah, actually, that brings up a good point. That brings up a really good point.
I'm not saying that they didn't sound okay or something, but I think there were some of the few. If I recall, there was a few design flaws with them a bit. Like the output of it wasn't really in low impedance, so you can load it down really easy. And if you didn't know, it would not work very well. And I think it was pretty much just the front end of one of their amps.
It really was. So, it was a lightning in channel 1, and then channel 2 is something, because I've actually traced it out, doesn't look like anything that Matchless has put out. At least I can find a schematic for. So it's a little bit different of a thing. It's funny. I'll make a reference to your last tone talk when you talk about EF86 tubes and how.
Oh fuck.
Exactly. Well, what's funny is I was going to build a clone of the Matchless. Nielsen and I have Matchlesses, and we love them because they do a specific thing that no other preamp does.
Probably a Vox thing.
Yeah, the box crunchy thing.
Yeah.
Chimey thing. Yeah. And then I was going to build a third channel based off of a DC30 that had an EF86 tube. And then you said that, and my heart just sank. I was like, oh, God, yeah, really?
Personally, of the Matchless DC30, which I do love, I find the non EF86 channel to be the one I like, because that is a top boost Vox channel.
Damn, I already cut the.
So, I mean, the other thing has a sound, but I mean, really, I like the other channel better. But
oh man, yeah, that's wow.
You popping pills there, Michael, while you pour the tequila.
I want to see him do the chime thing.
Or is that heartburn pills?
Yeah, I did that this morning.
Did you do the chime thing?
There you go. Cheers.
Cheers.
Opa.
Opa, yeah. Oh, that would be a bad show. Uzo.
Hey, I want to say hi to Cheddar Kung Pao. What's up, Cheddar? Thanks for the super chat.
Ooh.
Or as Pete says, Pete Thorne. I like when he says he calls it the top chat. I like when he calls it that.
He's Canadian.
Yes, exactly. Hello, friends. I will have a 7-unit of empty rack space in my new desk after a Claret 8 Pre each one. What should I fill it up with for home recording? Oh, wow.
That's
tough.
Boy. Well, that was one of the things I was going to say is we started talking about the Quadraverb. I mean, there seems to be strata between the effects units. I mean, I was talking to Nielsen via text this week, and it was kind of like, all right, well, you got an H9 out there, which is a great, awesome pedal. But how does the H9 really compare to an H3000, which is like, ancient?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, and then you taking a look at all the rack gear, what's below that and what's below that? And then when you go down the chain, you've got, I hate to say this again, but you've got Quadraverb, and then you've got all this stuff in between. Where does all that stuff live in between? I mean, I love stuff.
Before you answer, Dave, if you get low enough, it gets awesome again. Like the ART SGX 2000 is
no. Come on.
Watch the chat. It's gonna blow up. Someone will back me up here.
No.
Yep.
No. Nothing with the pink graphics on it.
The clown.
Rack gear. We can go into rack gear now. We did power amps. Okay, we touched on preamps. We haven't touched on all the preamps, but rack gear. So what was popular at the time? What was the really great stuff?
Yeah,
that's pretty easy. I mean, obviously, SDE3000s were fantastic non-MIDI delays. They still sound incredible. They have the Roland sound. That's hard to put into words what that is.
And up until now, they're cheap. But after the show, they're cheap. But after the show,
they're not. And they're not super cheap. I mean, they're
not that cheap.
They're
like $250 anymore.
$350-ish.
Going up in price.
Then you have the the holy grail non-MIDI delay, which is the PCM42. The thing about the 42 is very different sounding than the 3000. It was like 3-dimensional delay for me. So like it didn't sound just like you have a delay repeat going boom, 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 you know. It sounded like you had reverb on with it. It has this crazy depth to it. I mean, you just put let's say you put a 500 millisecond delay with 3 repeats. Man, it sounds like there's a whole reverb box added to that. It's just like this crazy, deep, rich, cool sounding delay.
And it sounds amazing in mono. I'll use that on a lead vocal in mono, and it sounds like wide and deep and
incredible.
Yeah.
You're killing me because I've got 2 PCM41s. I don't have a 42.
Oh, Jesus. And they're expensive.
Oh, they're over
$1,000. They're like $1,000, I think.
Yeah.
And they're probably more now.
Rising as we speak.
So you know, that kind of was the holy grail. That was the Michael Landau delay. You know, that was it was, God, it's deep sounding. Michael has one, you know, it's deep sounding. Jesus.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously the 41 was super cool. It's very similar in a lot of ways. It's a little different on the front end. There's some other cool tricks you can do with the 42 also, that some different studio mixers and stuff have used it for. It has a limiter in it. So on the 42, it has a limiter. So if you put no delay on it, you can use it as a limiter on stuff. And if you put it on guitars and just smash the input on an insert, it just plasters the guitars right in your face. It's super cool. That's of course, mental block now. The mixer is escaping me. And
one thing I was going to ask you about.
You'll know it here. I'm going to just mention System of a Down, Jeff Buckley,
Linkin Park too.
What I just mental block right now. Older guy now.
Bald with a beard.
Yeah, and you got the same block that I did right now.
Yeah. It starts with an A, I think.
Many heavy
Andy
rock.
Wallace, Kevin Slack.
Andy Wallace, thank you.
You got to it.
There you go.
Sorry, just mental block. Andy Wallace is one of my favorite mixers ever.
Yes.
He just crushes stuff. But he uses the 42s as a little trick.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
You can also use them on some drums, supposedly, and there's all sorts of weird little tricks he has.
David, I was going to ask you because I have a SDE3000, but I also have the SGD3000, and there's actually a chat post about that.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Okay, all right, we'll let you go.
We're getting there. Another non-MIDI delay. It's not MIDI. Is the Korg SDD3000. So this would be the edge, basically the edge. It's an unbelievable modulated delay, ideally suited in front of the amp, especially a Vox amp, because that's what it was known for. And you can use the preamp switches and the preamp gain to boost the amp a little bit. And it sounds incredible for that. And it's that modulated delay. It was very famous from the edge, you know. That was his thing.
And I've heard that the 3000, the difference between the 3000 and the earlier or the lower number versions was the preamp. You don't want the other ones. I mean, they're cool, but you don't want them. I mean, the SDD is the cool one. I mean, if you want to go for that sound, if you don't, well, not. And there's a reason why those SDDs are more than $1,000 a piece.
Yes, they're expensive. Yeah. And the other thing is, generally, they have, we'll call it old man disease a little bit, because they tend to get a little weird over the years and like have some weird problems and some cracked solder joints and different things that are.
I thought that was after dinner they just fall asleep.
Well, yeah, maybe make funny noises when they get up from the couch after they fell asleep.
Hey guys, I want to jump to a super chat. I just want to make sure I don't miss it. Ivan Smirnov, thank you for the super chat. I'm looking on the other one because it kind of already scrolled past the I can't show it on the screen. He said, what about power supplying in the old days? Were there some filters, special power supplies, or etc.?
As in 120 volt AC power?
I think that's what he's talking about, yeah.
Just a Furman, nothing. No, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't really need much, really, to be honest. Just a Furman, surge protectors, fine. There was no, at that point in time, there was zero, zilch, UPS systems or none of that stuff, really.
The one thing I was going to say about power strips is there's a reason why I bought the pile ones you see back here. And that's because you can actually turn off each outlet that's on the back of the power strip.
Oh, that's cool.
Some of these preamps don't have a front power switch.
Most.
Yeah. And I'm like, how in the, I can hit the power button on it and get all of them on, but what if I only want to run through one of them? Let me know. Yeah, and that's the reason why. And they've got a little bit of RF filtering, so you get a little bit of noise reduction. But actually, that's a good question. On noise reduction, a friend of mine actually posted up here about signal path routing through a rack, because you're building racks. How do you keep noise down? I mean, is it as part of the equation, the power situation, or is it?
Generally speaking, not. It depends. Ground loops are generally your biggest issue that you're going to have in a rack. Generally speaking, how we used to do things is we used to, and myself and Bob Bradshaw both, used to, we would, like in a rack, like with a bunch of studio processors, we would actually grind the rack rails. So it's bare metal, not paint.
Okay.
We would grind the back ears of a Furman because you want it to ground to the rack rails.
Interesting.
And then every piece of gear in the rack also on the back ears gets ground.
Oh, wow.
And then all that is screwed tightly to the rack rails. All power cables are actually ground lifted then.
Okay.
Because you need one ground point. You're still going to create ground loops in the rack, trust me. I mean, but you need one solid, really. You're not looking at this as individual pieces anymore. You're looking at this as one piece. So you need one ground point. So this is the concept behind that. As soon as you start having paint, maybe some stuff's connecting to the rails, maybe some's not, maybe the Furman's not connecting to the rails, and you're relying on all the AC cords. That would be fine if the rails were like wood.
Yeah.
And, and nothing was touching, and then you had one ground point via every AC cable. It just doesn't work out that way. You just can't. Yeah. That doesn't work. So, I mean, that's generally how we do stuff in all the pro rigs. Except occasional weird things that some wireless just didn't like that, so we ground those also. But those are things that you run into over the years. And then other than that, you have isolation transformers. You have to know what to do.
Yeah.
You have to know what to do with the switchers, how they're grounded, and the isolation transformers you have to put in the rig to break the ground loops between certain things. This comes with years of experience doing it.
Wow.
So this is not an easy thing to do.
No.
By no means to get it quiet.
Whenever I come in, that's why I ask them the questions I do, because I mean to hook all this stuff up together. I mean, there is so many different things going on, and part of it is. I mean, I had to go and do a buffer just to get the signal out of all the preamps through my effects rack into this bank of power amps.
Yeah, because I explained that to you why that was, because you were paralleling all the inputs to the power amps. Yeah. And so now a lot of those power amps have super low input impedances. Like the VHTs might be like 10K or 25K or something. So you parallel all these inputs, and that number keeps getting lower and lower and lower till you're down to like 600 ohms or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of preamps won't drive that. Some will, but a lot of preamps are poorly designed and they won't drive that low of an impedance load.
Well,
So-
to give a shout out to Mike Soldano, Soldano's preamps could drive that load.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other ones that couldn't do that.
No. There's a lot of poorly designed products over the years that have design flaws, shall we say? Yeah.
True.
So, Mark, do we have more super chats here?
Yep.
Let's do some of these, and we'll go back to the processors.
Yeah, this is a quick one. Blake Burris, thank you for the super chat. Best Plexi-ish head for under $1,000 used, a Run 20. If you can find a Run 20 used, I'd say yes.
Yeah, that would be good. Although it's not like strictly a Plexi-ish kind of amp.
True.
It could kind of mimic that tone, but it's not necessary. I mean, hey, I'll throw it out there. I mean, you can probably get the Marshall actual Plexi amp, 20-watt amp for less than $1,000, I would think.
Like the 2061 model.
No, the SV. Is it SV20 or something? The little 20-watt Plexi thing.
Oh, the new one that they came out with.
Yeah, just like they have the 800. That's also.
I got you. Right.
I mean, it sounds pretty good, and if you're on a budget and you want truly functioning like a Plexi, meaning no distortion unless you crank the piss out of it, then that would be probably the one.
Well, that's a good question. I mean,
could mine simulate that? Yes, it could at lower volumes. So if you wanted it at lower volumes, then okay, absolutely.
I mean, there was a guy had messaged me about doing a Plexi preamp that would fit, Van Halen tones and even AC/DC.
But
I mean, what would that be today? It'd probably be your Plexi preamp, right?
BE module out of a Synergy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do the Plexi preamp in a preamp form, and because you're distorting the power section of the amp.
Yeah. So
it would sound essentially like my small box Plexi, which would just be like AC/DC slightly broken up.
Yeah.
Right,
so.
Purposeful Porpoise. Yo, I'm getting a mid-late 80s tribute show ready of Missing Persons. That's so cool. Jan Hammer and Winger covers.
Awesome.
That's quite a mix.
Boy,
if I went all in and went for full fridge rack setup, what would be the must-have units?
Well, man, that's all over the map here. I mean, I guess you got to decide if. First thing you would need to decide is the preamp and the power amp if you're going that route.
Yeah.
If you're talking effects, well, we're going to keep talking about effects. You might get some ideas.
Right.
But that's a tough one.
Yeah, because going from Jan Hammer to Winger.
Well, I mean, like you could do it with a rack preamp. Like you could do it, say, with like if you need. Okay, off the top of my head, you could do it, say, with the new Ignator preamp coming out, mixed with the even the new Fryette LX power amp, or the single space, or you could do it with the 252 Fryette, or you could do a Synergy preamp where you could put any modules in you want, mixed with the Synergy power amp or a different power amp. So there's that, and then all the stuff that's in between. Well, we'll talk more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Just real quick on that, my kind of take on the live rack. There's only a few people I've ever heard live that the rack sound really came across. Anytime I've seen Lukather Toto or Los Lobotomies, it comes across and it sounds like amazing. But a lot of guys, like, the rack sound just doesn't. It just kind of falls away. So like really you just, for that kind of thing, I think you just need definitely a good chorus sound, because that's going to put you in that era.
Mm-hmm.
And then you probably don't need a reverb, and you probably need a good delay. And the rest is all, maybe a compressor, like a nice DBX to kind of.
For the, if you're doing a rack preamp for the clean, the spanky clean.
Yeah.
Kind of the fix clean, Remember the band, The Fix?
You totally
One thing
spank
leads to another,
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, do we have more?
We've got one. We've got a bunch more. Let's just take one more.
Let's try to knock out a couple more so we don't miss them.
Okay. I've figured out how to keep track of them. Modern Vintage, thank you for the super chat. What do you guys think of the Axe FX 3 for effects versus buying 3,000 to 5,000 in rack gear? Which rack units do you recommend most for guitar effects?
Well, the Axe will do a good job.
Yeah.
But it does by no means does it quite sound as good as the old stuff.
I'm going to double down on that. So I've got a Kemper. I've got an older Axe FX on the other side of the desk here. And, the one thing that hits me is the real thing hits you in the chest. You have to add an Aphex or Luxator plus probably something else in order to get that feel. The feel is going to be the biggest question. Is you're going to play it, but it's not going to feel right. It's going to be kind of, But if you play the real thing, you're going to get hit in the chest with it, and you're going to feel that this is the real deal.
Yeah, that's really so with the amps. I was even thinking he was sort of talking about it for the effects.
That's what I was thinking.
But I could be wrong. He could be talking about it for the whole thing. So what Toren said, definitely for the feel. As far as the effects go, they're really good. I don't know if they're as vibey.
I've done extensive ABC testing on the 2290 versus pedals and their TC's own plugins and Eventide's things versus Eventide's plugins. And when you solo them, you're like, that's it. It's 100% it. And then you put it in a track, and I'll be driving home and I'll have them cut, and they don't sound the same. I don't know why they don't sound the same anymore.
Yeah.
And I could match my PCM42 with plugins, but then when I put it in the mix, it doesn't sit the same way. I don't know why. When I solo it, you go, I'm looking at levels are matching. Yeah, it sounds the same. I have frequency analyzers, that's happening the same thing. And then you dial it in, and you're like, one is kind of there, and the other is doing swirls and this whole thing around you.
There's this this thing about analog that just sort of this three-dimensional. I think it's the distortions and the colorations that you get out of those pieces that just make it pop in mixes and stuff. It's like a real amp will always pop more than a modeled amp in a mix. Same pretty much with, a lot of the plug-in effects that we use today in mixing and stuff have gotten really good. A lot of stuff from UAs, as close as it could possibly humanly get. And it's way better than, say, 10 years ago. 10-fold. The question is does the UA SSL bus compressor sound like my hardware Allen Smart C1 compressor? Yeah. It's pretty close, but it's not quite that, and it's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain what that is. When you hear them back to back, you're just like, there's just something about that mix I like a little bit better. And this is blind. Blind A being, which is, it's like, but I don't know if I don't know in the end if that matters though. After it gets shoved through some inferior fucking phone with the crappy earbuds.
I bring them home. I'll print MP3s because I'm realistic. I'll print MP3s, throw them on my iCloud, and listen in the car on the way home. Listen on wireless version 1 of earbuds. You can hear the difference. You could totally.
Okay, well there you go, done.
But it's not that it's not a make or break thing. If you're not comparing, you can't tell.
Yeah,
if you don't have another unit to compare it to, there's no way you're gonna know.
Right. Or the sad part is your public that's listening to it. Do they know?
Or do they care? Probably not.
No,
I care.
Yeah,
right.
It's your fun.
Yeah. Some part of it's got to be fun.
Ralph Martin Alderson, thank you for the super chat. Korg DL8000R is a pretty good 2290 alternative. Anyone tried the Itali De Angelis presets?
The DL8000R is a cool unit. I know about this guy's presets too. I've never owned one of those units, so it came out way later than racks existed, kind of, barely. I mean, like it was at the tail end of rack gear, kind of. So I never really got to use them. So I'm not sure. I don't know, but I know it supposedly sounds amazing.
Okay. John Pearson, no question, but
thank you
for the super chat. If I missed it, if you had a question, let us know. Let me see if I'm getting down to the bottom here.
God, there's tons of them.
There's lots. Alex B, how good is the new Fryette LX for powering wet effects cabs versus something like a Fryette 252 or 290?
Well, for wet, okay. Are you going to put any dry in the cabs? The LX sounds really good. Basically, the LX is like the power station power section.
I have a confession. I have the LX on my search list on my eBay, and because
why don't you just get a new one?
Well, yeah,
I can help you out with that. They're in stock, by the way. The LX is good. I mean, it basically is the same power section in the front end as like the power station. So, which is, Michael, you like that power amp? Sounds good, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's basically what you're getting, and it's small. Although it does have a fan that does make noise.
There is that, yeah.
Alex,
the fan can't be as bad as my 2150.
Oh, yes.
Some people complain on the videos. They're like, "What's going on back there?"
How mandatory is wet, dry, wet versus simple stereo to you guys when using high-end chorus, delay, reverb in a live setting?
Well, okay. Stereo probably in general is not even like probably the greatest idea in a live setting, to be honest. Are you playing with another guitar player? Okay, if you are, and you have, let's say, 3 cabinets you got to do. First of all, the sound guy is going to go, I'll put the middle one up and it's dry and no one hears anything. Or, if you have your own sound guy, well, then he knows, put all 3 up. That's great. In that scenario, maybe stereo is better. Because at least then you just give them what they need to mix. But maybe mono is probably the best. I mean, if you're playing with another guitar player, say you have a stereo image, what do you do here? Are you putting the stereo image left and right? Like say you have a stereo PA and you're making this, left and right, and then you have another guitar player. Where is he? Is he mono rig or he have a stereo rig too? Then what do you do? So this starts to get odd.
So Dave, do you know, you might be the only person that would know this inside the band. In Bon Jovi, when Shanks is playing with Phil, Shanks's rig is like stereo to the balls, and I'm guessing that Phil is mono. So
Phil's mono.
So did they just kind of let Shanks be the like almost keyboard player around there?
Don't know what they're doing with his left and right. I mean, I know that I think they're also taking a dry also. And I'm pretty sure they're taking some sort of dry also, and there's might be a chance that a lot of that is blended in also for him. I don't know how he's dealing with it. Could be he's left and right and shanks and fills up the middle. Could be he's off to the center. I don't know. This is where it gets to be a problem. The stereo gets to be a problem. You know, I mean, like you're in the studio and you're tracking guitars, okay, and you're tracking. You can do left and right and center and bring up guitars and, you know, double track, triple track, do all sorts of things. Starts to get a little weird live when you have multiple guitar players. Yeah.
Right. In the studio, cool. I never tracked stereo either.
Maybe mono is a better choice in a live setting. You got two guitar players, then you have full choice of what you do with them.
Right.
And frankly, no one is going to know if you're in stereo or mono.
If you're the only guitar player
at all, no one's even if you're the only guitar player, no one's going to know.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like what you said, Michael, like the half the time you don't hear the racks or the effects. It just sounds like dry guitar almost with no effects.
Yeah,
you know they have effects. This is a common thing. So if there's a definitive effect, like a choppy tremolo, you hear it. Mm-hmm. A phaser, you'd hear a heavy flanger. You would hear. You know, you would hear heavy-handed effects. So the subtleties are only for your maybe in-ear mix. No one is hearing the subtleties out front.
Oh man, when I used to gig when I was late teenager and I had my dual rectifier and my quadraverb, and I was like, should I go 1 more dB of delay? No, down 2. And then in the chorus, I'll go up 1 more. And then I don't hear it at all. After like, where did any of my effects go?
How many live show and then you heard a recording of yourself, you couldn't even hear your delay.
Yeah, not at all. It's gone.
Yeah, I mean, like heavy-handed delays you hear, like if they seem like they're too much when you're sitting in front of it, that's probably what it should be to be able to be heard out front.
Yeah, and you can't dial it in without a band anyway. It's impossible.
No. Right. Let me jump around to some more. Ivan Smirnov. I guess that's rubles, 400 rubles or whatever that is. I
think so.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the super chat. David, can you tell us about your participation in the design of Budha amps? A little off the beaten path here.
Well, the SuperDrive series of amps, originally it was a SuperDrive 30. I did the front end of the amp design, meaning the power section they already had. And then I tweaked like a gain clean preamp channel switching for the front end of all the SuperDrive series, which then I was paid a fee for. In retrospect, that was probably a bad idea. I was paid a fee for doing it, and they ran with it with every SuperDrive amp they ever made.
Do they sound?
So originally, I thought it was 1 amp.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do they sound Friedmanish?
It's sort of similar to the naked preamp section, but with their power section. So sounded cool. The original early SuperDrive 30s were a cool sounding amp.
And you were around.
It's like a weird combo of Vox meets like naked.
Wow.
Interesting. J Custom, thanks for the super chat. What about the ART power plant? Supposedly Max Norman was a fan of it in the studio. ART power plant.
Never used it once. Never really paid much attention to it.
I only heard it at a music store when I was a kid, and I was like, "This sucks." But that's, I was a kid. That seems one of those like Max Norman. I can't imagine him going like, no, Dave Mustaine, or I think he was involved in the early Randy Rhoads stuff, and all, which of course there was no art then. But Guns N' Roses, let's unplug you from your Marshall and plug you into this pink zippity doo preamp. I just can't imagine he ever used it. He probably took a check and went home afterwards.
Right. That's funny. Stay curious. Thanks for the super chat. Michael Toren. Does the Mesa... Oh, you see, I just said it, Mesa. Someone asked the question. I'm not going to say it. Does the Mesa... Mesa? I can't do
Mesa.
Mesa.
As in a mess.
All right, Mesa. All right, thank you. All right, I'll remember that. I can't pronounce the amp company. Mesa. I can't do it. All right. So does the quad in studio have the flubby bass thing if you turn it up past 4? Never understood why the Mark series is designed.
Yeah. Every Mesa.
Well, I think
every Mark series.
To be fair, I think part of it is the power amp and then the speakers you put it in. I mean, I've got some EV120s that are pretty high fidelity that could probably handle the bass that's going on there. But yeah, I have to, yeah.
No, I mean, pretty much the bass knob needs to be a 5 or less. And then you use the graphic EQ to scoop the living piss out of it and make it a tone. So basically the graphics saves the day, generally speaking, with making the Mesa tone. If you did not have the graphic in, you can't get a tone out of it.
On the tri-axis, the bass is at 0, the mid is at 0. There's no lower setting than 0. It's just everything is like at 0, and then you just turn that graphic up.
There you go.
That's pretty much it.
John McDonald. Super chat. Do you have a TC1210 spatial expander?
That's like a dagger in the heart here. I know Nielsen has one. I have a TERC sitting right in the rack right here. Yeah. But I keep going, God, do I need a 1210?
Oh, 1210 is good.
Oh, but better than the TERC? I know there's a political thing with the with full tone, but do I need totally different sounding than the tri-stereo chorus. Oh, you're killing me.
The tri-stereo chorus is ideally suited for a slightly more wobbly chorus sounds, I think. Like a little more, you're hearing the spatial expander is just like wide.
Oh,
there was a trick with that too, and I can't remember. Separate inputs, maybe.
Nielsen, can we pony up and do a side-by-side comparison? Because
and that's another one of those.
That's gonna kill me.
They make a plugin that plugin is good, but it doesn't sound anything like the hardware. Unfortunately.
Oh man! All right, this is another $1,000 plus. Jeez.
They're hard to come by. It took me like 3 or 4 years to track one down.
Yes. Wow. They're stupid expensive. So, yeah.
Daniel Judge, thanks for the super chat. How is the full tone Turk compared to the Ditronics unit it's supposed to mimic?
The problem is that I don't have any of the Ditronics stuff. So I have the TRC. Nielsen's got the the TC version, but I don't have the original. So I can't tell you what the difference is, really.
Okay. We have to find someone with a Ditronic and put the two together.
Another super chat from Alex. Thanks so much. Do you guys think those classic rack effect units, considering age, maintenance, etc., are still worth it versus current digital effects like an Strymon, Boss for live playing at home? Live playing at home or live playing at a gig? That's different.
Well, okay. Look, I mean, this is the creme de la creme sort of, of stuff we're talking about here. I mean, do you want to do this live? Probably not. Are there alternatives to some of this rack gear that are in pedal format and things that sound great? Yes, there are.
Yeah.
So, or at least somewhat close, or as close as I would. There's definitely some standout pedal ones that are available now that you can use that will relatively mimic the old rack gear. And I mean relatively more so than a Fractal will mimic it. I mean, personally, I tend to go for the little more analogy, slightly more analogy approach. But so yes, I wouldn't necessarily say take this stuff on the road. Right. I mean, this is just at this point in time, it is old. I agree with your thoughts here. But if you want really the best sounding stuff, well, we can tell you what it is, which we're going to continue talking about if we're done with super chats right now.
Almost.
We're never getting through this evening.
We will.
One quick chime in on that last one is the other side thing is that if you're gonna do that, you have to pony up and get the mint condition ones. Like if you're gonna get a PCM70 to take with you out on the road, get one that is clean, like fresh out of the box, new old stock, and you're gonna pay for it. Like don't get a $500 one because you're gonna regret that terribly.
Yeah.
Or buy multiple ones.
Just carry this.
Oh God. Jeff 144, thanks for the super chat. Any suggestions for an affordable stereo amp to get started with a wet, dry, wet rig and the Dirty Shirley Mini?
So cheap.
I would say a Moss valve.
Well, Moss valve, we can find it. Or maybe the Marshall solid state something 8080, isn't it, or something, or 80. There's a solid state single rack space Marshall that was pretty cool.
I have a PV solid state one that I'm using for, and it's new. I forget what it's called.
Oof.
I don't know about that one, Mark.
You don't like it?
I might get the thumbs down.
A thumbs down on that one? All right. Well, to me, it sounds fine.
Right. I don't know what affordable. I'm assuming you're looking for super cheap. So, like I said, like that Marshall one's good. The, I guess if the Moss valve's available, it might be cheap. I'm not sure. If you can find a Lee Jackson one by chance, that one's great.
Yes.
You know what? So some of it's not too bad. Some of the old Rocktron single space ones were pretty good. The Velocity ones, they weren't horrible. That could be good. Maybe not my favorite, but
False 9 wants me to say you don't want me to say Lukather, because I can say it the right way, but I will say Lukather just for you.
People don't know. Mark will throw down at some point. He's going to take enough of it.
And
I'm taking a beating.
Mark's going to crack, and he's just going to go crazy.
He's going to go postal.
It's okay. I'm drinking tonight.
He's not going to do that tonight. He'll be good. He's sipping. Okay, are we back to rack gear now?
We are back to rack gear for the moment.
Okay, so we did the SDE3000s. We did the SDD. We did the PCM42s, which, we touched on the PCM41, which is sort of the PCM42 sound, but minus a readout. So it's kind of useless unless you just want to dial in your tone. But it does do a great Steve Stevens ray gun tone, which is what he used to use for the ray gun.
Nice.
On the record, that's what was used for ray gun.
So I have to ask until
you haven't done that, Michael?
This video.
No.
Oh yeah. If you use the modulation knobs, it'll do this whacked out thing. You can get it to oscillate and then bring it back, and it'll be do the ray gun.
All right. Next week, we'll try that.
I have to ask, because prior to this video, which has been a completely changed reverb, what do you think about the Rocktron information, Dave? I mean, all this preamp, all this effects units like the IntelliVerb.
Well, hold on. We'll get there. We'll get there. Wait, I got another one to talk about rack mount delays.
Okay.
One of the first MIDI. You notice we didn't do any MIDI delays yet.
True.
So one of the very first MIDI delays that existed was a Yamaha D1500. Yamaha D1500 is a fantastic delay.
Oh no!
Bob Bradshaw used to use them a shit ton. In Michael's buying one now.
Exactly.
Michael, hey, I'll save you some time. I probably have some extras.
I'm just looking.
First of all, it's an incredible sounding delay. It's really simple to use. It's got 15 presets that you can store via MIDI, and it's got a great modulation section. You can do some crazy cool modulated, not just modulated delays, but you could do choruses and things, and that sound incredible. Bob used them all the time in his rigs. They were awesome. I think I own 5.
Wow.
I think maybe 6. I'm not sure all of them work, but I think I do have. There's definitely some that work fully. That's a winner, man. That's a good one. So that would be the top 3 delays of all time. Were D1500, SDE3000,
yes,
PCM42. I mean, there's a lot of other ones that are really good. Don't get me wrong, but those were the really widely used ones. Yeah. So also MIDI delays. We can. I'm trying to categorize these somewhat.
By the way, that Yamaha
2290, unbelievable.
Yes. Real quick, jumping back, that Yamaha is what Steve Vai had in his skyscraper rack.
Sure. Yeah, Bradshaw. Yep, he put them in tons of people's rags.
The 2290, my new baby.
2290 is amazing sounding. It's an incredible, warm, 3D sounding, gooey, cool, easy to use. Everything on the front of it, delay, man.
You know what cracks me up is if you look at like some of the old interviews and magazines, they'll say, "Oh, I'm using the 2290 multi effects," which is kind of how they marketed it.
Yeah,
it's a delay.
It's a delay with modulation, like a full modulation section. You can use this for great chorusing, great flanging. I mean, it's like a true traditional delay that has a modulation section. You change the delay times down to 20 milliseconds or 30 or 40 milliseconds and use the modulation. You get a chorus. You get a whatever. It had a cool switching system in it too that you could use, effects loops and stuff you could use for rigs. You could like put a compressor in it and switch it in and out. It wasn't a true stereo delay, meaning you could do panning, but it was one delay time. So this is where they kind of came into a little weirdness. Most of the rigs back then had 2 delays, and it was discrete left and right delays, generally speaking. And so this was one delay time panning instead of 2 delay times where you could set the individual repeats for each side. And so it was a little mono-ish for 2 rack spaces, shall we say.
Well, and it doesn't. Yeah, I know that's the problem. It's 2 rack spaces.
It's 2 rack spaces. So I mean, like if you were gonna, there were a lot of rigs that were put together around those because they had loops, and you could put some things in the loops. There was even one stereo loop, and that was cool for that. They even had a pedal board that went with it, like a MIDI board that you could plug into it and switch stuff. So it could be the center of a rig. There were lots of those rigs that happened back then. Kind of more simplistic rigs. Still sounds one of the best sounding delays.
It's what?
One of the best sounding delays, though.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this, and I don't know if you could hear it so much when it's set up live, So like you said, it's a mono delay, and then the delay gets an effect. So like there's the modulation, which ends up becoming a chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the pan, which doesn't come across like a ping pong. It literally sounds like someone is just panning the delay behind you. I find that a little weird and distracting. But if you set it up stereo, the left and right or the center channel, it's like slightly out of phase. So you get your normal guitar sound, and the delay does come around it. So it sort of comes out stereo, but it's a little like out of phase, unless you just go one output, and then it comes out nice and fat.
Yeah, sure.
It's a weird thing, but it kind of adds a lot of dimension too. It's another one where you don't need reverb; you just put the delay, and it adds tons of dimension to the sound.
Super, super, super cool. As far as delays go, well, I mean, we can. You can go on forever with this, but I mean, those were the main ones that were super popular. There's lots of others. So we could talk about reverbs, but the other box that was really popular was a PCM70.
Yes.
A PCM70 you could classify as a reverb or a delay, really. And it was mainly known for its great reverbs, but it had really cool choruses also, and it had the Steve Lukather thing was the circular delays. So the circular delay patch was just crazy. I don't even know what was going on in that. If you stood between a stereo rig with two cabinets, it literally sounded like the delays were swirling around you while you're sitting in front of it. So cool sounding. Yeah. So cool. Untouchable cool. And the reverbs sounded incredible. Lexicon has a history of, having incredible reverbs across the board. But I mean, that was the main one. I didn't really like anything else. I mean, after that, the PCM 80 and PCM, I don't know where they went after that, to be honest, but it kind of lost it for me. I mean, PCM 70 to me sounded better than most of them.
You have that one, Toren?
That makes me feel good because I have a PCM 70 and 80. And then we don't see the sidecar, but I have a bunch of other effects units down below. But yeah, when you say that, great. That means I didn't put no 91.
PCM 70 could actually, Lexicon in general, with their MIDI effects, possibly have the worst user interface ever known to mankind. ever known to mankind. Like it's a whole new architecture that you have to wrap your head around, because it does not make any sense whatsoever to me. It still to this day doesn't make any sense. Once you do wrap your head around it, you can sort of understand it.
I actually just learned that you could adjust the delay time on the PCM 70. I didn't even know you could until like 2 weeks ago, and then I can't get back there again. I don't know how to get.
You have the program stuff, but then you have the register stuff, and then you have it's this whole hierarchy of like banks and preset numbers, and man, and there's a quick start guide somewhere that makes it a lot easier if you look at it.
Just don't adjust.
But I haven't used one in years. If I put one in front of me right now, it would be like foreign as hell. I would not remember. I do remember it being hell when it was around. They later even complicated it more. If later on down the road they did the MPX1, which was a great sounding unit, incredibly impossible to program. Where I'm scratching my head and you're reading the manual and one chapter says refer to chapter 2, and then you read chapter 2 and it says refer to chapter 4. Well, that's where you just were. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense.
You're killing it for me because I have I have the Ruffle effects, which I can imagine.
We'll get to the Rocktron stuff in a minute. That stuff's easy. Then Lexicon later came out with the G2.
Oof.
And the G2 was a really cool unit that could one of the first units that would do the pre and post, like 4 cable method deal. And the G2 had front end analog effects like Octavia and Tube Screamer and stuff like that, and then back end effects of the great Lexicon stuff. I'm in the manual on that one. I helped develop it, and I still don't understand how to program it.
I didn't know that. I bought that. I opened it up. I tried it for like 2 days, and then I sold it because I couldn't get a sound out of it. I got one sound. I got a phaser or something that sounded great, but I couldn't get any reverb or delays. I just
it's just hard to use. It's just hard to use. I mean, that pretty much goes down that whole Lexicon path. I mean, you can go further with it, but I mean, that was the main stuff. I mean, there were some little cheap gizmos they made over the years that sounded kind of cool, but LXP1, which was impossible to program without the controller. It was MIDI, but the reverb sounded great. If you're going to use it just for reverb, that was cool. Things are just coming to mind. Oh, wasn't there an LXP15 too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awful. I mean, the basic reverb sounds always sounded good, but it's like the user interface wasn't there. So then we get to Rocktron.
Well, what you're saying is, after the 3000, it was all downhill.
Basically, after the PCM70 with Lexicon and the PCM42, forget about everything else.
All right. Okay.
Don't bother. Then the Rocktron stuff. So Rocktron stuff was at the time was great because they made the Hush units and we used those a lot back then. They made the Patchmate switcher, which we used a lot back in the day. They made some MIDI controllers that were cool. There was a heyday here. It was great. It was a Michigan-based company. I went to the factory once when they were still like a U.S. Michigan-based company.
What year is that?
Oh God, early 90s. I probably went to the factory.
Okay.
So they came out with the IntelliFX. IntelliFX was a incredibly good sounding unit. Had an analog dry path, which was super cool. Had a built-in hush, which you could actually use. So if you had one processor in a rig, it would actually work. Man, the reverb sounded really good. The delays sounded really good. The choruses sounded really good, particularly good.
Yeah.
And then they came out with the IntelliVerb. I liked that a lot and put it in Jerry Cantrell's rig. I put it in Dean DeLeo's rig when I did those rigs. It was basically an upgrade for the IntelliFX. So you could get now the IntelliFX only went up to 400 milliseconds, I think, on each delay time on either side. That wasn't long enough. To do a stereo delay thing, you really needed 250, 500, 300, 600, somewhere in that vicinity. So to do a true stereo delay, that's what you needed. And IntelliVerb did it. So IntelliVerb had everything the IntelliFX did and had great reverbs, great chorus, but it had the longer delay times. So that's why we use those.
Okay.
And they sounded great. It was like a great multi-effects all in one. You could do your chorus, your delay, and reverb, and all have them going at the same time if you want or not. And it was probably the best sounding multi-effects unit ever made.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Multi-effects unit ever made. So and analog dry path, everything about it. You didn't need a mixer. You didn't need anything. You could use one unit. You could basically get the stuff you needed. So you could do a preamp, that, and a power amp. It was killer. So then along came the Replifex.
Yep.
They did essentially the same architecture, the same kind of stuff. They added some other sounds and stuff, like a cool Leslie sound that they did in there, and they did a amp channel switching with the Replifex. It had a channel switching jack that you could switch the channels on your amp. Compressor, it had some other thing. That truly was even more of a multi-effects.
Yeah.
That was really good. I mean, it basically had all the sounds. So I might go for the IntelliVerb for the win, but just on pure, it was more processing power applied to the effects that they had.
Yeah.
So all those were killer. They did good stuff. I mean, IntelliVerb was great. Still to this day, Dean DeLeo.
Yes.
The Demeter.
That's why I bought a IntelliVerb, really, honestly.
The Demeter preamp, the IntelliVerb, and the VHT 2150 or Classic. Wait, I can't remember. 2150, isn't it?
What Mike did.
It was a Classic. I don't remember.
I mean, Nielsen, you did.
I think it's Classic.
Yeah, I bought an IntelliVerb because of basically Core from Stone Pilots. I mean, you did a lot of that same sound. So I bought an IntelliVerb, which is already.
I'm not sure. I don't remember if he had it on Core though, but maybe when I first did his rig, and this was right after they had just recorded the record, he was using the Demeter preamp with. He wasn't using that effect yet. Then I don't think.
Oh man.
He was using it into a Crown power amp though.
Okay.
And then that switched to the VHTs right after that and the IntelliVerb, but he's used that all forever since then, and it sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, I redid the rigs, like, I don't know, this was quite a while ago now, but I had redone his original rigs. Oh, this is probably 10 years ago now. And man, when I played them again, it was like, God, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm still using the exact same thing. The Demeter, the Rockman Octopus, which does the channel switching on the Demeter, the IntelliVerb, and the VHT power amp. And then on the pedal board, he has a wah and a CE1 chorus that splits off. One side goes to an AC30 also. This was added later, years later. So that's what he uses. So, and he's never, ever changed.
So Nielsen, you use the TGP3, which is right here. You use, did you use a Rocktron? I mean,
yeah, I had that switcher for a while.
Oh man.
You're talking about the effect.
Octopus?
Yeah, and then I had an IntelliVerb at the time when I had done the video on that a couple of years ago. Yeah, I mean, I love the Demeter preamp. I think it's really great. It's pretty unique. Like, it's not for everybody because the like higher gain stuff turns into almost like a vintage mushy dual rectifier kind of thing.
Yeah, but he doesn't use it that high gain. You know, the gains are like half-ish. So it's
clean
not
to like plexi and just like hard rock and stuff is awesome.
Yeah, that's what it basically does, and it does it well. God
what
knows if his was just like the units or not. I'm not sure, but it's a disaster inside.
He reissued it based on Dean's unit, so I have one of the reissues. I know there's two models. There's one that's more the rockin' version, and one that's the more
right.
I think like Sonny Landreth version.
Okay, we're going further down the road here. So Eventide.
Oh, Eventide. All right.
Eventide. So Eventide was okay, we're gonna go in like more modulated land, I guess. Okay, well, let's do the choruses first. There were two rack mount choruses. and we already mentioned him. There was the Tri-Stereo Chorus, and there was the Eventide 1210 Spatial Expander. Yep. The Spatial Expander in certain modes really just kind of widened the signal. It wasn't really heavily chorused. The Tri-Stereo Chorus could be more wobbly of a chorus. So Mike Landau made that one kind of famous. And Lukather, well, did he have both?
He was a 1210 guy.
He's a 1210 guy. He used that almost all the time. But you can use that in a mode that is just like a slight chorus that just is widening everything. So those are distinctly different freaking things. And you should have both. Whoops.
That's a serious.
Knock something over underneath me.
That is a serious investment, honestly, to get both.
Well, I mean, if you're collecting,
Baker sent me a reverb listing for $3,000 for one of them.
Yes.
For what?
For a 1210.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
really
that's ridiculous.
That's like
Michael now knows what he's selling.
Hey, Nielsen has one. I know. I've seen it.
Yeah, I know. It's $3,000 now.
I got one for $1,000 like 4 years ago.
Yeah. So that was really the Rackmount choruses. I mean, okay. There was one more honorable mention. The ADA stereo tap delay.
Wow.
Which had all the little switches on it. And I think Alan Holdsworth used that a lot early on. That's super cool for that modulated thing too. You don't see him much anymore, but it was cool.
Here's a super chat from Rummy. Dr. Nielsen. Dr. Nielsen. What kind of chorus and delay for John Sykes vibe? I have a Mesa Triple Crown and play a LP custom, Les Paul custom. My drive is the Freeman BEOD. So what kind of chorus and delay for John Sykes vibe?
I gotta ask, do you need the BEOD with the Triple Crown? Or do you use the Triple Crown clean? That's a lot of gain.
I would say he probably uses the clean.
That's a lot of gain.
Yeah.
For this, chorus. I actually would probably go with more of like a micro pitch shift thing, a little of that. Because he got super effecty on Blue Murder, the first Blue Murder album, which is like super rack effect sounding. But the Whitesnake album doesn't really have chorus until it's like the clean guitars. And I don't think it's a ton of chorus. It's a lot of like reverb and compression and delays. And I think he had a 2290 delay, but he had great old rack gear like the RMS, AMS, RMX units and stuff like that. And I don't think live he was such a stickler, like crazy nutty, like Eric Johnson level. So it was dry to the bone. And if he was going to use a wah on a song, his poor tech would have to run out, hit bypass, plug in a wah, or it wasn't a wah, it was to use a clean channel. He would have to turn it off, put an ABY splitter, turn on the amps, come back, and then for the next song, come back, bypass everything, take the splitter out, go back to the Marshall. Like crazy. He's the only one that could hear that, but he was very stickler on it. So there was no effects live, but I would just, I would go subtle, short, bright, like plate reverb, subtle chorus, and some delay. And I don't know. I don't think he's as much about the effects as he is like the attack. You have to kind of earn it on the guitar to
So we've got a bunch more on. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Do that.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just trying to get through all this stuff. There's a lot.
We've got a lot. We've got a lot of lot of super chats, so I just want to get to them. Abraxas one for $4.99. Thank you. With all the clones of classic rack gear, what piece is still miles ahead of plugins or pedals that seek to replicate it?
Ooh.
Everything we mentioned. so there's that. Yeah, everything we mentioned pretty much. I mean, I'm trying to do the creme de la creme stuff. So
they tip. It's really weird. Like the H3000 is among that group. I had an H8000 thinking that, oh, this is going to be the shiznit, and it's like two H3000s. It's not. It tips over, and that's those kind of era stuff. Once you get into the later 90s and the new stuff where the plugins are so close, because stuff just starts going really, really digital, that it's easier to recreate. The old stuff where there's really strong analog front ends and they have like analog oscillations and stuff, that just, it has a sound that the plugins are great. I use them all day long, but it's just not quite the same thing.
Gotcha.
Oh,
go ahead, Dave.
Okay, you asked that. I'm gonna get my beer.
All right, go for it. This is Dave Lucy. What's up, Dave Lucy? How are you? Nice to see you, man. Any mention of the Schultz Rack Rockmans? Even it's a roast and not a fond mention.
Oh, hang on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
It's break time. It's break time.
He's getting a
Rockman.
He's getting a Rockman, I bet.
Or not.
Nope. Maybe.
I think he might have to go to his car.
You had to run in the restroom.
No,
I mean,
to the right out his door there is his door to go outside. So.
Oh, really?
Or his studio room, one of the two.
Oh,
I
actually
haven't tried the Rockman stuff. Oh, wait. There we go.
Studio room.
Blue. It's blue.
There it is.
Oh,
it's the Rockman.
nice.
Sustainer.
Sounds the same as the other one, but you have more tweakable controls.
It's so light. It feels like a remote control for a TV.
Def Leppard in a box.
Def Leppard in a box. Alex King. He'll love it.
Any more?
Okay, so do we like that stuff?
Oh,
I haven't plugged it in yet.
it has a sound. I mean, no, I mean it could be a cool sound. I
like the clean stuff.
The clean stuff with the Rockman's kind of cool. I mean, the dirty stuff. I mean, I was never a fan of Boston. I mean, let me rephrase that. The band was good, but his Guitar Town wasn't my thing. But
it's funny. I've said this before on previous shows. I actually really like his tone on some things. I mean, so to me back then, I was just like, God, the guitar sounds so great.
Well, there's some stuff that Def Leppard did with it that were great too. So I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's a tool. It's another tone tool. So if that gets the tone you want, then it's great.
That's cool. Daniel Judge, I think I got to your previous question, so thank you for the previous one, and thank you.
Yes.
Do you recommend parallel mixing these racks effects? If so,
yes. I mean, pretty much. I mean, depends. If you have multiple effects, definitely parallel mixing. If you're just running one, maybe not, depending on which unit we're talking. So there's a big if there on what's what,
Raphael Hudson, any thoughts on the Marshall JMP-1? I know I loved your video.
We're getting there.
Michael Nielsen.
We'll go back to preamps. We haven't touched on a bunch of preamps, so we'll go back.
Yeah,
we'll go back to that
one. All right, so let's do that right now. So let's do that.
No, we're still
okay.
Now we moved from choruses to pitch detune stuff.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be a 3-hour show.
I know it's freaking. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through it as fast as I can. Pitch detune stuff. There was only two. You had Eventide and you had Yamaha. So SPX90 was one of the first MIDI effects units. I think maybe the first MIDI effects unit. I could be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure it was. That and the D1500 were, I think the SPX came first though. So I guess sort of Eventide I think started it. So because you had the 949s and the 910s and stuff which were non-MIDI devices that were specifically for pitch detuning and or complete pitching. I mean, you used to use them in studios to actually pitch vocals and things. What a pain in the ass. Unbelievably so.
On tape.
God, the amount of effort that went into tune a vocal.
Forget it.
Between cutting tape and using Eventides on the fly and punching it into a note. Oh my God. So, the pitch, originally the Eventide I think was first. So that would have been the 910 or the 949. And originally it was used to be a harmonizer, it was used to be but what they became known for guitar was pitch detune. So you heard that a lot on, early Van Halen things, starting with the Fair Warning record, I think. So the first time the pitch detune became heard, I think it was Fair Warning record.
I think so. Yeah.
The other records were more raw before that. And that became wildly crazy popular during the 80s. That was the LA sort of sound, the pitch detuned guitar, distorted guitars, really wide tone. It was like essentially the Eventide started with it, but they were mono. They used to need two to do a stereo thing, which was crazy. I think then I don't know chronologically, but the SPX90 might have come first then, and it was a MIDI device, and you could do pitch detune. Micro pitch shift is what it was known, right? Micro pitch shift, right?
That's what Eventide calls it.
What did SPX call it?
I don't remember.
Micro detune. Was it just detune? I think it was just called detune.
Okay.
And essentially you use the micro adjustments to detune it, like -8, -9, and +8 and +9, just to give it kind of a wide spread.
Right.
And I think it was detune.
Pitch change, I think they call it.
Pitch shift.
Because it was before like they got fancy, right? It's just like pitch change.
I don't know. You have an SPX90.
All right, I'll plug it in. You talk, I'll plug in.
So anyway, the SPX became wildly popular. You didn't want to run through that thing though, because it definitely changed your tone. Best to use with a mixer, and then you mix that in. It sounded crazy. Lukather, Landau, all these studio guys, made that wildly popular. And then we moved on to the H3000. So the H3000 was good for a variety of things. Although, frankly, it was a 2-rack space box that used micro pitch shift. Everyone used micro pitch shift. And pretty much that's what they used out of it.
Ooh.
Although the reverbs are incredible. The delays were cool. Isn't there a pitch shift delay too in that? That's really great. But frankly, almost everyone used it just for the micro pitch shift. But
most of the racks you put together, were they like one unit for one sound and it was on and off?
More so, yes. Because the Eventide, you can go have lunch before it changes presets. You literally could go have a sandwich, come back, and then the finally switches the preset. So, which was a pain in the ass with the Eventide. So you really didn't want to switch it on the fly. It wasn't too bad if you had a mixer and you had the dry, because the dry would just continue straight through and you wouldn't really hear the dropout. But, most people honestly just used it for the micro pitch shift.
It just says pitch change.
Okay.
Pitch change. Interesting.
But the thing about the H3000 is, man, nothing that they made after it sounds as good as it. So
even
they did the Eclipse.
The 8000, 9000.
They did the Eclipse. So that's a nice single rack space unit. It was like, hey, this is a cool eventide single rack space unit. And it sounds good. But if you compare it directly right next to an old H3000, no.
The 3000 sound.
It just doesn't.
In Nielsen's video, he compared the Eclipse and the 3000 with the H9, and to me, the 3000 killed both of them.
I've never done the comparison, but I could tell you, at least on the Eclipse, and when I hear the Eclipse, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty good. When I hear the 3000, I go, oh yeah.
It just sounded so deep.
That's I think I mentioned that on the last show, didn't I, or something? I said there's the effects that make you go, oh yeah. And then there's the effects that you're like, oh, that's pretty cool, that sounds good.
I don't know how I can thank you more, because you just validated that purchase of that H3000.
No, the H3000 sounds great. Now, in a rig, it was kind of a pain in the ass because it had a huge field hum. Ooh. So like anywhere it was near stuff, it would cause problems with and would cause a little weird hum. But so that's a boo. So a pitch detune pedal that was great later on. I know we're not really haven't made it to the pedal part yet, but I'll just mention it real quick now, was the Digitech Lux.
Right.
That was just a single knob, mono in, mono out detune. That one sounded great. So it's simple, tiny little pedal, size of an MXR Phase 90, so super cool. Yeah, I have one if you want to compare it, Michael.
That pedal's gone up in value since we've mentioned it on the show.
The Lux?
Yeah. anything.
Not as much as the Polara.
Oh, right. Don't even.
The Polara reverb went through the roof.
Oh wow, there's one for 110 on that.
I bought a Polara because of Nielsen's video, but also the whole Lexicon thing, and
right.
then
that and the hardwire reverbs were great.
Yeah, well, true.
So
true.
I guess we get
let's just talk about this.
There's a couple honorable mentions of weird stuff that's cool and rack stuff that I don't think we've touched on. Reverbs. We didn't get to reverbs, did we? Not per se.
Well, before we get there, let me go back to. There's the super chat that Mark just put up. Justin Espinoza. So here's the one thing I'm going to say to all the guys out there that want to do their own stuff. Bruce Egnator's class is awesome. I did it 2 years ago. I built a 30-watt head up here on my rack here, and it's a great little soapbox. It's a great class. It talks about tone stacks, talks about circuits, talks about everything. And Justin Espinosa was right next to me while we built this amp. It was awesome. It was a great experience, and I'd recommend it to anybody, really.
Bruce and I we're toying around with the idea of doing a joint venture class.
Oh man,
with him and I. And it's just a pipe dream, but I'd really love to do that. That'd be super fun.
I'd do it again, honestly.
And it would be more of a Friedman-esque take on the class.
Oh, that would be even better. Having done the first one, that would be even better.
Yeah.
Do it, please.
So, we'll see. Well, let's get past the roadblocks, shall we say, that is going on right now, which hopefully we're going to see some light of the day here in the next year.
Yeah.
And then we'll see if we can get back to some semblance of normalcy.
Well, I mean, to tell you, back in the 90s,
require vaccines for the class.
Back in the 90s, when I was getting out of high school, that was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to build guitar amps. I graduated in 93, and I wanted to build guitar amps. And I went to the local community college, and I learned about electronics. Yeah. And they had a class like that back then. And I said this to Bruce when I was in the class. I said, if you had this class back then, I would be in a completely different industry than I am today.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, there wasn't any resources.
Bruce taught me everything I know, pretty much. So I mean, you know, like Bruce said once to me, we were sitting around drinking once, and Bruce goes, you know, sort of Paul Rivera was my mentor in getting into this stuff and doing this stuff, because Paul was doing it first. He was before everyone. Yeah. And then I looked at him and we're drinking. I look at him, I go, well, you realize that you're my mentor in this.
Yeah.
Completely, entirely. You know, that was you. And he just took him by surprise. I go, it's the same thing, but just even more hands-on though than you would have been with Paul, you know?
Well,
he's so humble.
Dave, I mean, where's the next generation going to come from? Honestly, I mean,
I have no idea, because it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, I mean that's why his class. You know, if he does
I think it exists. It exists because
there's guys out there.
There's a younger engineer that's working with Boutique on a bunch of things.
Okay,
that is definitely younger, and he's really good.
But
really, really, really good. Like crazy technologically advanced, like blending tubes with digital and things, and just like really good. So, you know, there's a lot of future coming.
Well, there is, but
Michael might know something about some of that.
Mm-hmm. Where is the bridge between them? That's the thing that I'm concerned about. I went to that class, and it was an awesome class, and it really filled in a lot of the gaps that I missed over the years. And right now we have IRs. We have got a ton of technology that needs to bridge that gap. But where is the school to bring people up? That's really where I was going with that. It's
that is true. Yeah,
it's. I mean, the knowledge is going to go to a few, not too many, and that's one of the things that I kind of worry about. But then again, we talked. I mean, I watched the last Tone Talk we had. It's how many tube factories are still in production? I mean, how long is tube be for? And that's the other part of it.
2, I think.
Yeah, 2.
There might be more than 1 in Russia, though. Wait, I'm not sure, but maybe 3. Chinese currently isn't.
Yeah.
So
I like to think that all of the tube information is just being stored in Dave Friedman's head, because every time I ask him a question, he like, "Hey man, you know anything about that?" He goes, "Yes, I know everything there is to know about that."
Yeah, I mean, to give a nod back. I mean, earlier in the chat there was my friend John Graves talked about the nailer that you have, Nielsen, that I don't, that I lent you. That then basically where is all that knowledge going? I mean, all these cool preamps you see behind me. I mean, I've got a museum of preamps, but where is it going? What's the next step? That's really, thinking about it from a rack perspective. What's the next step beyond what we're doing today? I mean, yeah, we can go ahead and collect old gear, but who's the next guy up to then further that paradigm?
Good question.
That is a great question.
That's. I mean, looking at it right here, there's let me go backwards because it's reversed on the camera. There's Black Widow. So Black Widow made this preamp. It's a it's guitar preamp, but it's made to model analog all the things that say, Kemper or XFX is doing digitally. And, there's some to that, basically, where you can get a different sound out of a true analog path than you would a digital path. And where are we going with this is really the big question. And that's really the kind of the bigger piece out of the whole thing. And having a guy like me that collects all this old analog gear, where are we going? I mean, is it to go and learn from the old designs? But where's the future to this?
Well, I would say synergy is definitely part of the future.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because it's still part of the rack situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're
pretty much
rack.
the synergy stuff is pretty much the rack stuff is what really sells.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much so the heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't talk about what things we have coming. So
it's really a tough one. It's really a tough one. I mean, you look at it; it's really a tough market because you got all the sounds we love, and then you've got where do we go from going forward? And is it synergy where we make modules that plug in, or do we go preamp?
No. Well, I like that Egnator. Egnator's coming out with something. I've got a feeling that there might be something coming from Friedman, maybe. I don't know. Just a feeling based on what you're saying, Dave.
We got to get back to more of this stuff because otherwise we're going to go on forever and everyone's going to sit here like, what about the rest of the stuff? Honorable mentions, I think I was getting into the little oddball things that I've discovered over the years. So that sound great. So someone touched on the MXR delay, rack mount delays. Those old Blueface ones are super cool, along with the flanger that they made in that format and the pitch transposer. Pitch transposer for me was made famous by Trevor Rabin. And the Yes album that Yes album that he did. Well, he did too, but owner of Lonely Heart and all those songs.
91025.
90, yeah. There was pitch transposer all over that. And a very archaic unit, doesn't track very well. Super cool sounding though. So those MXR units, awesome. They sound great. ADA did more than MP1s or whatever they were. They did some rack mount effects also. So there was a multi-effects called an ADA 2FX unit. I have one sitting in front of me actually, but I can't show it because it would be too hard to do. ADA 2FX was a cool one single space rack mount effect. It had like flanging and chorusing and delay, and the delay sounds like a great cool, almost Lexicon-like delay. It sounds incredible. The chorusing super cool, the flanging super cool too. It just does a thing. But even just for the delay sound, I own 2 of them because I liked it so much for the delay.
Oh, man. Yeah, you let me borrow that. That's really a good unit. Totally unassuming. You would think like, oh, that's a throwaway, and you plug it in, and it's great.
No, yeah. No, the delay sounds incredible. Just the juicy factor of delays is what I like to refer to them too. Is like when you play it and has this just gooey, syrupy kind of greatness to it. 3-dimensional quality to it. That's what I look for. And that one does it. That's why I own 2. Well, actually I own 2. Here's the reason I actually own 2. I bought one really quickly once and it didn't have the foot pedal that came with it. And I didn't really realize it. I just made that quick purchase. And I'm like, but I can't. But I want to foot switch it. So then I bought another one just to have the foot switch. So I got two, you know. Nice. One might be for grabs. If someone wants it, but they can't have the foot pedal. There's also a ADA 1 second delay, single rack space. I think it was called the 1 second delay or something. It's just, there's no MIDI, there's no nothing. It's in and out, and it's a delay unit. It has modulation, and it's just delay. No readout, no nothing. What's so funny? You're dying.
There's a guy in the chat that says, at 250 likes, we're going to down a shot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, well, shit. I mean, why not? I mean,
Mike and I are texting that I'm just so fucked up right now.
You know, for once, everyone else is getting more drunk than I am.
I switched to coffee.
Mike switched to coffee. Toren slurring his words.
I should not drink anymore.
I mean,
Mark gets funny when he gets drunk.
We're all at home except for Nielsen. Nielsen actually has to drive home. So
yes.
I have my wife on call. She'll come get me.
No, wife's gonna come get. He's not gonna drive home. He's gonna have more tequila.
Oh, that's great.
We haven't made it to the preamps yet, so yes, probably.
We haven't made it to the preamps. Oh wait, but okay. So I those are the honorable mentions off the top of my head. I might be forgetting something.
Okay, can I get your opinion on this in honorable mentions?
Wait, I'm going there. That's where I was just going.
What was that?
So there was two multi-effects units by Boss that they made. Well, actually, they made three, but two half rack space units. One was the SE50 unit, which did the pitch detune stuff. It did great delays. It did pretty cool reverbs, but mainly the delays and the pitch detune stuff was really good in it. And then they also did a more full featured one called an SE70. SE70 actually I don't think was quite as cool as the SE50, but we used to put two SE50s. It was a big powerhouse. If you think about it, you put two of them in one rack space on a tray, and you have two full units. And man, they switched fast and they worked great. Typical Boss. They're really
easy to program too. Some of the best interface. It's really simple.
Yeah. Similar to the Yamaha interface on that. Super easy to program. Super easy to SPX 90 is easy to tool around on too. You know,
they just give you the important stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's the thing.
So was that a SE70 or SE50?
That's a 70.
Okay.
All right, so George Berry says the SC70 was better, but that's on my list. Is SC70 or SC50? And I texted Mike.
Man, SC50 was better.
Oh, wow.
I think.
I texted Nielsen earlier this week.
Yeah, Michael, you got to buy. Now you have to buy an SE50, and you got to compare. I mean, I don't think it's that much yet. I could be wrong.
Reverb search as we speak.
So I played through this. I just got it. The choruses and modulation sound actually like great on it.
Mm-hmm.
The delays are like good, and the reverbs are kind of grainy and like rough.
Right. I think you'll find the delays and the reverbs might be better in the SE50. But you know what? It's been a lot of freaking years since I compared the two. So I could be totally wrong with this. And actually, okay. See, the problem with this rack gear is there was a lot of it, right? So we had issues with this. So honorable mentions in reverb department were Ibanez SDR 1000 or something. I think, was that it? SDR 1000? Maybe. Great reverb. Same reverb as Sony. There was Sony that made some processors called a crap, I don't remember. No. There were two Sony processors made, and I think even there was a half rack space made later that were and I can't remember what they're called now. There was a delay one and a reverb one that were fantastic, high end, really good sound quality, great. And that Ibanez was actual made by Sony. And another one that was cool from Alesis later was the Q2 Quadraverb 2. So great unit. You could do discrete delays left and right. You could do long delay times. There's one of the first ones you could actually make your blocks, and add effects, and you could put detunes after delays, and you could actually make your signal path. So,
Wow. Dave, you're killing me because you're naming all this stuff and I can't have my reverb searches updated while I'm talking to you.
I've done this. I've done that.
We used the Q2 quite a bit over the years. That was a good one, actually.
Wow.
That's hysterical.
We're always looking for that one that would do everything, right? So you could have smaller rigs. You get smaller rigs. So the Q2 did it quite well, and it sounded really good. Maybe not quite as super juicy analogy as some of the other ones I've mentioned, but it did it quite well.
But it's still $600 though.
Yes, well, so it's still kind of expensive.
Hey, quick question.
I don't know, man. I think that might be it for the, at least off the top of my head right now, for the effects that I can think of.
Oh man, it's a good one.
Okay.
Are you ready? Because we were doing reverbs. Did you get the Roland?
Oh nope, I missed the Roland. Sorry.
Sure.
All right, go for it.
Okay, Roland. SRV
SRV
2000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great reverb. Great hall, great plate. We used those. It was really a standard in guitar racks back then. Crisp would be a word for the reverb to me.
If someone wants to know what that sounds like, just put on Appetite for Destruction. It's drenched, and the guitars are all running through that.
There you go.
You're kill me.
And it's like it's got a vibe. It doesn't sound. It's definitely not Lexicon. You couldn't do that a Guns N' Roses record with a Lexicon reverb.
No,
it's like
it's almost like brighter and snappier than a Lexicon.
Like Welcome to the Jungle, like the delay on Welcome to the Jungle.
No, it's all reverb. So it's like
reverb. Okay.
Yeah, it's the reverb. But the Boss reverb, the whatever it is, RV500, the 500 series pedal does a really excellent version of the SRV 2000. Actually, all of those 500 series pedals are really good.
So now we kind of wrapped up most of the rack gear, unless I'm totally forgetting something.
Compressor, did you ever use anything other than a DBX 160?
Yes, compressor.
Yes. Compressors. Yes. DBX 160, the CAD compressor, CAD compressor was used pretty widely. And this was mostly used, this was mostly just used for clean sounds,
Yeah.
And also some honorable mentions for the there's a great JBL compressor, JBL 7110 compressor. That was super cool. Also super cool for studio stuff. And you could get it with optional output transformers in it. Ooh, yeah, gooey. We won't get into studio stuff because that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Honestly, most of us are consumers are looking at studio stuff more than really live stuff. So
yeah, but Why do I feel left out?
Marcus. I mean, honestly, Mark. I mean, we're all bedroom guys. I mean, that's really what it is. That's where 90% of the market is bedroom guys trying to make a sound, and the live guys are like 10%. I mean, seriously.
I'm sorry, I'm just losing.
I don't necessarily think that that's what they're laughing about.
No.
Do you want to share?
I'm just waiting for Mark to pass out.
Wait, this would be the best tone talk ever if Mark actually just falls out of his chair.
I shut off my camera, but I forgot to mute my mic.
Anyway,
That's the part that got me. You shut your video, but your audio. I'm sorry.
Best Friday ever.
so this is what it was like when I was going off the chain with Jakey Lee, right?
Yes.
Best tone talk ever, though. By the way.
I know. I've heard this a million times. Best tone talk ever. I hope to get him back on one day too, but maybe slightly more sober on my part, at least.
Yes. Well, we'll get him back.
Maybe not totally sober, but at least slightly. I won't take it quite as far.
Well,
Sorry,
honestly,
Michael.
we're as an audience, we're getting the best out of all of it. There's no filter, so.
That episode had zero filter, by the way.
There was no filter on that one.
There was no filter. The filter does not exist with Jake.
Well, that's why it's the best. I mean, honestly,
Sober, not sober, any time, doesn't matter. Doesn't exist.
I just love when Dave goes, so we've got a question from P. Thorne. He goes, Jake goes, what's his problem?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Stuart
Rose has a
I have a
question.
quick compressor question. I'm sorry, Mark.
Go for it.
Oh, wait,
Do you
the
prefer the
compressors-
compressor before or after the preamp?
no, most all of it was after the preamps at that point in time. Although I was never that big of a fan of doing that. I preferred a pedal compressor in front, to be honest. And there were some racks that we did that did have that. Like they still use like a Dynacomp or something, a vintage, not the later Dynacomps, a vintage one.
Yeah. I have an analog.
There's a big difference between a vintage Dynacomp and shall we say like the 80s reissue of the Dynacomp. There's quite a large difference between the 70s and the 80s ones. So you want the older ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Ross compressor or something like that.
Compressor. Keeley, it's good. Stuart Rose, I'm enjoying the 80s LSD rack.
Closer to your mic, Mark.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for the reminder. I'm
Mark
enjoying
doesn't know how the SM7s work yet.
No, it's more like Mark's too fucked up.
Well, yes, but
I'm enjoying the 80s LSD rack flashbacks. Sorry.
maybe I should do this.
What's up with the legacy and current production rack switchers, RJM effect gizmo, and how is that new UA effects have no MIDI? Oh, yeah, well, that.
A legacy. What's up with the legacy and current production rack switchers? Well, they're rack switchers. I don't know what that question means. They do pedal switching. They do rack switching. They do all sorts of switching. It depends on what you need to do with them. As far as the other part of it, what was the other part of it? Sorry, wait. Oh, Strymon. Wait.
No, the new UAD pedals. No MIDI on them.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why they did that, but I want to hear those still. I don't have them yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard of them either.
I'm supposed to hear them at some point.
Here's the evil of having so many things to switch is looking at what's on the market right now. What can I switch in and out? And right now I'm using GCXs. You can see them, but RGM is 12 different loops. I mean,
well, yeah, but depending on what the switcher choice is very dependent on what you're doing with it. So, I mean, the GCX was designed the way it was for a reason. And in your scenario, God knows how you're using them, but they're probably good choice for what you're doing, to be honest, because every loop is isolated and you can put loops in different spots and there's no ground problems between the loops and things. So in regards to that, it might work well for you.
Well, yeah. I mean, my problem is, all right, do I give an extra 4 or do I do it at 8?
No more booze, Mark. No more.
I finished that. Bottle's
you
done.
did it. You finished it.
Man.
It only took you like 6 years.
4 years.
4 years. 4 years for one bottle of scotch. You know how long? Michael, you know how long it took me to finish your bottle of scotch you gave me?
4 days. 4 hours.
I think 2 days.
Okay,
but I did share some.
Well,
so you know, I did. Michael's getting cold now.
Yeah, I forgot to set my AC. It's like 68 degrees in here. It's cold.
Is it cold in California right now?
No.
Not like the rest of the world.
Modern Vintage, thanks for the super chat. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's given a super chat. Thank you to everybody. And also check out Sweetwater. We have a link in our description below. Please check out Sweetwater.
Like if you want a Bracosti, please buy it from Sweetwater. Like
exactly. That's only like what, 6,000?
4, 3? What is it? How much is it?
I don't know anymore. 3, 4.
Did you get it from that? You bought it a while ago.
Yeah.
We get a percentage of that, whatever it is. But thank you for clicking the link, and whatever you purchase from Sweetwater, we get a little commission on that. We appreciate it.
It helps support the show and our guests and things we have to pay for and things like that.
Exactly. Our podcast, little things like that. Modern Vintage, you're always a great patron of the show. Thank you. Dave, you taught about great audio paths previously. How much do they play a part in these great rack units? Is this missing? Is that the missing part with modern?
Yes,
it is. So before you had inferior D to A and A to D converters, completely inferior, lower bit rate. Now you have great ones, but before you had great audiophile audio path with full-size parts and great capacitors and great, maybe not the most advanced op amps in the world, but still great general audiophile paths. Then you get great A to D converters and D to A converters with shitty surface mount components and crappy audio paths, and part of the design is lost. Now, I'm not saying like that's not the case for something like a Bracosti reverb or something like that, because that is designed well, or a lot of studio gear is designed properly to have great audio paths. But your standard, run-of-the-mill processor is not really. It's just cheap stuff. That's a problem. Like home audio too, like, even receivers and things like if you, I don't even know what receivers are made today. You know what I mean? Like I don't really know, because I don't buy anything new. Right. Like I have a turntable. That was a new turntable, but I bought a U-turn turntable, which is a new modern company that has decent quality. I'm not saying it's the audiophile best, but I wasn't going to pay $20,000 for a turntable. But I have an old receiver and it sounds amazing. And I had a pair of old studio monitors laying around, like old Tannoy PBM8 studio monitors laying around. And they sound amazing as a reference monitor, like with an old stereo amp, So My gardener gave me a Marantz receiver that someone was throwing out.
Oh, God.
You know, the old wood boxed Marantz, you know, from the late 70s, early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, like, one of the little speaker connectors was kind of cracked on the back, but I literally put it on the scope and looked at both channels, cleaned the pots and stuff, and it works perfect. And sounds incredible.
Nice.
So any of that old stuff from that, like the early 80s and the late 70s on those home receivers and things, man, I don't care even if it was considered junk at the time. It sounds better than things you can buy today. You know, a Technics, which was not the high-end brand, but a Technics receiver, which I have another one here, always sounded good.
Mm-hmm.
You put this new turntable into my Technics receiver into these Tannoy speakers. I'm like listening to it going, oh, yeah, that's what that vinyl sounded like when I was a kid.
Exactly.
You put on Van Halen 2 on vinyl with the turntable with the good speakers, and you're just like, oh, my God, that's amazing sounding.
So
you
much
do
different.
not get the same feeling listening to it off your computer.
Nope.
Even through your studio monitors that are great.
An MP3 is just not going to be the same as an album.
Well, I mean, even if it's a full range file, it's still, yeah. Off the vinyl. How I heard it first was off the vinyl.
Right.
So that was burned into my brain.
Same here.
It's a difference, man. The difference.
Yep.
So,
John McDonald.
Ooh.
Thanks for this. Sorry, John McDonald.
2101.
What's that?
2101. Terrible to program. Yeah. The Digitech rack pieces. 2101 and what was the other one? The ISP 33B. I called the ISP 33B the Rackmount whammy. Essentially, that's what people would use it for. Just the Rackmount whammy. And the one he just mentioned had a preamp in it, if I recall. And you could do some direct recording. It was a very kind of archaic version of what we have now with fractals or direct recording preamps and things. I knew some guys that got some good sounds out of those, though. I mean, direct recording is strange, but they got good stuff out of it.
Cool. We got Brent Piercy. Thanks for the super chat. Just picked up a G system on the cheap. Good for you. It's a 3rd gen with the B modified silver version input. So far, I've been extremely impressed. Thoughts? Also,
G system wasn't a bad unit. It was a little wacky to program at times, but it wasn't. It was a cool unit. I mean, I don't know if it was like anything to. I mean, it worked well. I don't think it was anything to like totally go crazy over. The D2 unit, though, was actually quite good. It was strictly a delay unit. Steve Stevens, I think, still has it in his rack. And it sounded that was pretty good. But it still had the same issue with the 2290, just the panning delay, It wasn't 2 delay times. Very similar, though, sounding, actually. Wasn't bad. And, to even go further with that, Tim, again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
again,
much.
second show in a row that you've done this, too. You don't have to keep doing this. I love you. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate it, though. We really do. Where the hell was I going? Where were we? We were at the D2,
D2, but the D2 it does have full multi-tap. The D2 is like pretty modern. I don't know
D2 is modern. It's good. You can tap tempo it. It was a good sounding unit. It wasn't like
My partner had one. It was good sounding.
Yeah,
Nice
it was good sounding. I like that one. It was simple too. It was the delay. They also had the reverb version of it. M1 was it or M?
I don't remember.
It wasn't M2. It was M1. I don't remember. That wasn't that popular, but the D2 was okay for a minute. And like, to be honest, like for multi effects, like TC later moved into the G major. So that was like a low end multi effects unit. Wasn't very expensive. Actually did a pretty damn good job.
Hmm.
I mean,
and it was cheap.
That's one of the bigger questions is what in today's market is a great kind of, maybe entry level for rack guys or something to get you into the market that would give you, decent value without going into the stratosphere for.
Well, the G major was cool. Here's one reason. Another reason G major was cool. If you used it with an amp, I think it had, if I recall correctly, it has a amp channel switching jack on it that you can program.
Nice.
So that would switch the channels of your multi-channel amp, like two functions. So like if you plugged it into a stereo cable into a Friedman, you could switch all three channels and still have this multi-effects. Yeah. It was good. I don't know if I want to say great, but it was solid and worked well. The bigger version of that was the G-Force. Did not have the channel switching part and had a very horrible problem with it. They have, if you put it in a switching system, you put it in a loop, they screwed up with a design and the loop would pop when you click the loop in. And it's because there was actually DC on the jacks. So you used to have to make these special cables that would have a capacitor in it, 2 resistors on each cable going in and out in order for this not to pop. And when I say pop, I mean like bang, like bam, that was a pain in the ass. And it sounded good. It was used a lot later on. You could switch in and out effects blocks in it. It could do a multi effects chain. You could change the order of things. Wasn't my favorite. Actually, I almost picked the G major more than that.
Wow.
And that was the cheaper budget version of it. So yeah. I think I'm done with rack gear.
Yeah, well, I mean,
unless I've
power amps. I mean,
wait. One more thing, EQs.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
So they used to be rack mount EQs, not very many. Well, there were many rack mount EQs, but ones that were used in guitar racks mostly were the Audio Arts that Mike Landau used. Audio Arts parametric EQ. And then there was the and then there was the TC parametric EQ.
Yeah.
Both those two. He's digging something out.
What about the PQ3?
Can't get it
PQ3.
Can't get it out.
What was it? What's back there?
The Audio Arts EQ.
The Audio Arts EQ is awesome sounding. So essentially, the Audio Arts EQ was used to add sparkle to the Soldano X88R clean channel, because the X88R is not very sparkly.
Yeah.
On the clean, so that they would use that to add the shimmer thing to it.
Well,
And the PQ3, okay, that's a whole different EQ.
Yes.
PQ3 was used to preamp a bunch of stuff in the 80s to preamp the front of Marshalls and boost them. So that was a whole thing. Dimebag Darrell made a huge deal out of that later. Yes. But in the 80s, I mean, like everyone used those. Rat, and you saw them everywhere.
Yeah. Well,
there is not an authentic pedal that does that yet.
Is there a different version? Because I have a green version with red knobs.
Yeah.
Nielsen, you have a different version than I do. Is there a difference between the different versions?
I have red knob.
Okay.
I'm stuck on yet.
What do you have?
Huh?
I was saying I'm stuck on yet.
Yes, yet. There isn't an authentic replication of it yet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the other, well, if you're talking boosting pedals too, you have to, and you're mentioning EQs, you have to mention, even though it's not rack gear, you have to mention the Boss GE10 EQ and the MXR 6 band and the MXR 10 band, the original ones.
Do the 6 and the
widely used in the 70s and the 80s for boosting amps.
But they were
and
pedals.
It's not an authentic replication of the GE10 yet either. Yet.
Okay. Brent Piercy, thanks again for a super chat. I just picked up a G system on the cheap. It's the 3rd gen with the
you just repeated yourself, Mark.
All right, I'm sorry. That's all right. That's okay. I just want to make sure. That's all right.
That was like the second the same question I asked Jakey Lee twice.
Okay.
My favorite part of the Jake one is when Jake goes, did I ever tell you when Mick Mars called me a slant-eyed Japanese bastard? What?
Wow. Yeah, that was part of it.
I mean, literally, I'm like, he did what?
Being a half Asian, yeah, I totally picked up on that.
Literally, I was like shocked. He said me that. I'm like, he did what?
Yeah,
he's all good with him now, but like it wasn't like he said. Like at the time, he goes, I don't think he's a racist.
Right.
It was just like a moment in time, like said something that was,
Dave, are you doing a run of BE100 Deluxes soon? Patiently waiting.
Oof.
We're always making them.
I'm in that group.
So we're always making them. I just tested a bunch of them. So, what I mean by a bunch is maybe I'll test, 10, and then another week I'll test 5 or 6. Or we're always making them. It's just, here's the thing with the pandemic, everything went insane. Everyone on Earth wanted an amp, or everyone on Earth wanted a pedal. And we just can't keep up with demand. So we're doing our best. We're trying to literally make them as fast as we can.
It's so crazy to me. It blows my mind that during a pandemic, during this,
everyone's spending a ton of money.
Everybody's spending a ton of money on guitar gear. It really does blow my mind. I mean,
across
guitars
the board,
can't stay in stock. Amps can't stay in stock. It's crazy.
No, I mean, Sweetwater's had the best year they've ever had.
Well,
and they told me that the biggest issue is they can't get the gear fast enough.
I tell you what, until this show, our rack gear was normally priced, and now it's going up.
Oh, we're screwed now. Yeah, forget it.
Exactly.
You better buy quick.
Right, buy it now. Buy it now. That's
so funny. I think I've covered all the rack gear. At least that I recall. I could have forgotten some things.
Is there anything from a power perspective? What would you recommend from a power perspective? Did we cover that?
I mean, a Furman, just a regular Furman. Don't go crazy. Don't spend too much money. Don't spend more than $200.
There you go.
Okay. I mean, you don't have to. You really don't have to. And if your wall voltage is some crazy voltage, in some parts of this country, wall voltage goes as high as 126. Your amp is not going to sound good at that. So if that's the case, you should. on your amplifiers, you should probably use like a brown box or something, or a Variac or something to knock it down to 120 or less. 117 even, just like give it a little breathing room there. Well, because man, high wall voltage just sounds awful. Like, it just makes everything sound harsh and just not friendly.
Exactly. It sounds like crisp and weird.
I mean, let's talk about the sexiest thing in the room, which is the preamps. I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but let's go into that, because that's
let's go into the preamps now, and that will end the show after we're done with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 2 hours. Yeah.
We're already at 3 hour mark here. By the way, guys. Preamps. Well, I mean, we did touch a lot on the preamps, and I said what were the most popular ones, but there are a lot of preamps, man.
For the rock guys, what were you installing, like on the rock side of things? What were guys using?
You saw
about the JMP-1. Was that
you saw ADAs? You saw the Marshall JMP-1 for sure. Marshall JMP-1 sounds amazing to me. I think that was an amazing preamp, and it was baffling to me why they had that preamp, and why at that point in time you think about what was out for their heads. So, which was JCM 900s, right? Possibly the worst amps they've ever made. So it was baffling to me that the JMP-1 sounded so good, and they couldn't just put that in the amp.
Well, does the JMP-1 has like 2 tubes in it? I think.
Yeah, I mean, a vast majority of it is solid state.
Yeah,
but it still sounds awesome.
But it sounds awesome. So I'm not. I mean, it is a high voltage tube signal. I mean, it's passing through high voltage tubes. It's not. They're not running them at like anemic voltages or anything. It's just some of the gain stages that are pushing certain things are, solid state. So is the JCM 900. But I never understood. You could have killed it if you would have put that preamp with the 100-watt Marshall power section, and it was a MIDI amp. At that point in time, I don't understand.
The 900s were floundering. They kept putting out different versions.
I mean, they literally JMP-1 preamp, Marshall power section, done. Like MIDI, switching head. That would have been crazy good. Because the JMP-1s still to this day people used. I mean, Def Leppard used them for years. The guys, Billy Gibbons, Iron Maiden, tons of people.
Now, what do you think about the JMP-1 versus the modded ones that are out there?
No, I mean the stock one's fine.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if the modded one's any better or not. The stock one sounded good.
Okay.
I mean, you did overdrive 1, never 2, never shift the EQ, and the gain. Well, you could put the gain where you needed it to be, anywhere from, I think it was like up to 20 was the number. So you could, I don't know, 16, say you set the gain at OD1, and then the EQ, you used to set the presence, treble, and mid at half, because it was like an active EQ. And then the bass was maybe a little, this has been a while, a little above that, maybe 6 or something, 7. And if you just did that setting into a good power amp, it sounded gold with whatever volume you want it to be, obviously. It just sounded great.
Guys, actually, this is like the money shot at the end of the porno, honestly, because we're talking about preamps, and
you can way screw it up with that EQ, by the way, because it's the plus and minus boosting EQ. So it's boosting or cutting. So you can way screw that up. So like minor tweaks. I mean, like, okay, maybe you want a little less mid. Okay, maybe like -1. You want a tiny bit more mid, maybe +1. You're not going to go broad strokes on those EQs because they're like radical. If you set those things like about where I said, it's good out of the gate, roughly good out of the gate. And I used those a lot over the years. Those were great preamps. Switch quick, everything about them was good. Why they didn't put it in a head, I'll never understand.
Can we talk about some of these preamps that are so rare, like the Langner preamp? And some of these preamps that are just like, where did they come from and why are they so rare?
Well, the Langner, the Langner, Todd Langner, I mean, he had a moment in time in the 80s. He did some Marshall mods. He made a preamp. It's extremely high gain.
Yes.
The Marshall mod, I've worked on a couple Marshall mods, like so high gain, it's not even. I remember one guy that brought me some of them to work on, and literally I worked on, there were some issues or something. I worked on them, and he like literally said after it was done, it's like, is there any more gain you can get out of it? I'm like, I literally looked at him. I go, that is physically impossible to get more gain.
It's funny.
It's so gamey. It's not even like there's so many gain stages cascaded into each other. It's just a fucking oscillating nightmare.
Dave, what's funny is I sent a text to Nielsen about that because I looked at it, and because I have two preamps. I have the first version and I have the V2, which was the production version. And I told them, I sent them actually a GIF from UHF, the movie, which was basically drinking out of the fire hose. And I said, this is like drinking out of the fire hose. And there's 5 gain stages before you hit the end of the thing. It was so ridiculous. I mean, wow.
I mean, I've heard it sound really good.
Yeah.
I've heard it sound good. I'm not dismissing it as a sound, but it's a lot of gain. Holy crap.
I mean, there's a bunch of them. I mean, Nielsen and I did I lent him my oh God, I'm blanking on it. It's the
Morin?
The Morin that sits right there. I mean, awesome.
Awesome preamp.
I mean, Nielsen did a great video where he showcased that preamp. I mean, there's a lot of Marshall variants that are out there.
Yeah,
that just do awesome things. But
the more interestingly is what the Lee Jackson preamp should have been. There's a lot of ties in the Morin stuff to the Lee Jackson stuff.
Okay,
the mods, but improved upon in a better way. That's a great preamp. That's a really good preamp, actually. There was a single that Morin preamps. There was a single channel Morin preamp. Oh, here's the one you got to get.
Oof! All right, here we go.
So there was a small run of single channel Soldano preamps.
Oh man, let's do this offline so no one knows on Reverb what to look for.
There's a small run of single channel. Sorry, you already said it. But a small run of single channel Soldano preamps that he did custom. I don't know how many Mike did. I could ask him, but just a single of the third channel. I know someone that has one, but I don't think he'll ever sell it.
Well, here's the funny one. I mean, Mike and I are emailing back and forth at a regular interval. He's got a brushed aluminum X99 chassis in his possession that I am vying for to replace this one.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, but yeah, that
Ask him. Well, ask Mike how many single channel SLO preamps did you make?
oh my god,
They were literally breadboarded
killing
preamps.
me.
So.
You are killing me because you look. I have everyone.
Well, that is the rarest of rare, I think, and super cool because it sounds really good. So.
Nielsen, I'm looking at you.
Nielsen's just laughing. They're all laughing. It's just like Toren is fucking just imploding with this idea. And
it's my fault.
Only I would know that exists.
Oh my god! Well, I mean, let's go to the Bogner lineage. I mean, I'm sitting there buying a lag, Spitfire.
Bogner. Okay, we can go Bogner. I know all about Bogner.
You got giant. You got triple giant. You've got
triple giant.
Yeah.
You have triple giant prototype. You have triple giant, which only one exists or two, and which are hand done with multicolored knobs on it, Strat knobs. Yeah. Then you have triple giant production. Which came in various faces, some silver, some green, if I remember. Then you have the Hafler versions of the triple giants.
Which I have, yeah.
Yes, which are like the sort of slightly less, slightly not as good sounding as the originals, but still good. And then you have. Well, then you move to the fish.
Yeah.
Then there's all sorts of Marshall mods they did really early on too.
So where does the GP, the groove tubes go in?
Oh, the groove tubes basically was one he was hired to do and make. I forgot about that. Sorry, that was sitting right in front of me.
That was Bogner, right?
It was around the era of the Triple Giant. And it's all Bogner sounds on it.
You got the Voodoo Labs down here, which we talked about.
Oh, yeah, Voodoo Labs he also did. Yes, correct. Single rack space, right. Voodoo Lab one.
Oh,
we talked about
that. I own Nielsen.
Not my favorite sounding one.
Why is that?
Nor is the Trio. The Trio seems kind of stiff sounding to me. But I think if the Fish sounds better than the Trio.
Really?
And the original Triple Giant sounds better than the Trio also.
Wow.
What else you got? I mean, essentially, the whole Egnator preamp thing came about because what we used in guitar racks all the time were the X88R. And at that point in time, it was mostly that. Then along came the Bogner. But the the original Bogner, but then the story was how the Egnator came into existence was a client of mine, Randy Jacobs, who was in the band Was Not Was with Don Was, had a Soldano preamp
with Don Was,
center channel modified by Bruce.
That was his name, Don Was?
Yeah.
Yeah, Was Not Was. Don Was.
Yeah, like Walk the Dinosaur and yeah.
Yeah, and so later went on to produce Stones records and producer and all sorts of stuff. So Randy had this X88R when he came to me that was modified by Bruce Egnator. I knew Bruce Egnator from when I lived in Michigan. And I heard this X88R center channel. And I was like, holy crap, that sounds amazing.
Oh, man.
Way better than the stock center channel.
Okay.
And Michael knows something about it. And so I'm like, what we need to do, I called Bruce and I'm like, I talked to him and I'm like, hey, remember me, blah, blah, blah. So here's what we need, man. You should build a 4-channel preamp. And the idea concept was, the pitch was, I want a Fender clean.
Okay.
a broken up Fender, like Super Reverb broken up kind of thing, like that's Stevie Ray Vaughan almost thing. Modified plexi Marshall, so to speak, for the rhythm, and then a hotter one. So that was my pitch. So in turn, he and I helped develop the original 4-channel preamp, which then I sold to every studio musician possible in Los Angeles.
Oh my God.
Tim Pierce. Oh my God. It was all sorts of people. I mean,
how'd you go about doing that?
Well, I was in the thick of it. I worked for Andy Browers. I worked with making music. I was in the middle of it all.
So you just reached out and just said,
yeah. It's like, hey, here it is. Boom, boom, check it out. Boom. Everyone bought them.
Yes.
Sold tons of them. So that's how that whole preamp came about.
It's great.
Because that was, I mean, the perfect thing. I mean, at the time, that was the perfect thing. You know, you had your plexi modified plexi sort of Marshall kind of thing, cranked up Marshall. You had your higher gain version of it. You had your Fender clean, and you had your Super Reverb cranked up SRV kind of thing. You think about it, those are all the sounds that you might want to use, you know?
right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I mean, all these preamps are really the genesis of that. It's, you know, what do you modify from an existing amp to create sound? And that's from the top, from the Mako all the way down. That's really what happened, and that's where we're at. I mean, that's why when you said that, that's the most awesome statement ever, right there.
Yeah, that's how it came about. I mean, that's what the real world application. So, like, I mean, early on, people were like, okay, I had my studio preamp for clean, and then I had my slave Marshall for dirty, and then I would hit the slave Marshall with a boost pedal for that. You know, that's what happened.
Oh my God.
We got a super chat from John McDonald. Dave, having experience with the Marshall JFX X unit? JFX
I remember it, but I never used one actually. So,
you know what's funny?
I'll be right back though. Sorry.
So I'll tell the story. I was searching for a JMP1 because I didn't have one, and there was a JMP1 down in San Diego, which is south of me about 3 hours, with a JMP1 together as a set. And I went there on Craigslist, and I was going to buy the thing. And I actually took my wife down there for a getaway, really. And I ended up losing. I ended up losing that bid, which is the most hilarious thing ever. But I would have got the effects unit, and I would have got the MP1 in one shot. It was crazy. Actually, one story to tell. Actually, I'll tell you one story that's funny. How I met Michael Nielsen, which he had actually listed his Bogner fish for sale at one time on Reverb, and I had searched the listing for Bogner fish and said I didn't have one, and he had pulled the ad, but I still messaged him. I said, "Hey, it's still available," and he said, "No, I'm gonna keep that thing because it's really a special thing." But from then on out, every question I had on Rack Gear, it's Michael Nielsen.
I don't know if this is you or your wife, Mike, but 25 years and this is the only 5th time I've seen him drunk. Good job, guys.
That's awesome.
Guilty as charged. That is my wife.
Really? Only the 5th time? I somehow don't think that's true.
I've got a pretty high tolerance, honestly.
Oh, I see.
My wife's sleeping right now. Otherwise, she'd be saying that Mark is out of his mind right now.
So any more preamps we need to discuss there? I mean, there were the 2-channel Soldanos, cheaper versions. Those were good. The Series 2 purple one, I think, was good.
Yeah, I think they got a bad rap. They're actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, they sound good. I mean, there's the obviously I see there's the Randall version of the Egnetter stuff, the early stuff. There's the Egnetter version of the modular stuff. There's the Synergy modular stuff. Obviously, the Synergy is the newest, latest creation. What else you got over there? Oh, there's a Hughes and Kettner or something there.
Yeah, to be honest, though, actually, the Randall stuff is probably the best bargain. I mean, I used to pick up his modules at better.
That's bang for the buck.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a single channel. You can't change channels, but that's actually pretty cool gear, honestly.
Oh, bummer. You only get 4 channels per preamp. Okay.
Exactly. RM4, 4 channels.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried that humongous, the Mako? The like 4
Yeah, the Mako. What's that like?
Well, I mean, it's up here. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, from clean to slightly gainy to super gainy.
I've never heard one, ever seen one in person or heard one.
Well, Dave, if you ever want one, I can loan you one.
Yeah, I know. If I want to listen to it, we have a big source. Michael, you have a Mesa Barbara over there?
Oh, that is a cool pre. In fact, Nielsen's got one he just got that he can talk about.
Yeah, they sent it over for me to check out because I had been trying mics and I was like, oh, that sounds really good. And then they hit me up and he's like, you want to check out your studio? So it's really cool. I haven't been able to like spend a lot of time with it, but it's cool. It's got like a
SLO thing.
Yeah, because it doesn't like scoop out, but so it's like a fatter gain, and it has like a nice like rock kind of character to it.
I'm just wondering because the amps and stuff literally are clones of SLOs.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, or slight tweaks on SLOs.
The preamp
wise,
like even if you look on the inside, it's almost the SLO.
Oh, preamp doesn't like sound like the X88 or 99, so that's
okay. Maybe it's different. I'm not saying it is. I'm just curious. I was curious,
but it's in that world for sure. It's much closer to that than like the Morins or.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the Marshall modded world. I'll say that, but it's not X88 for sure.
Bill Lima, thanks for the super chat. What are your guys' opinion on the Engel preamps E530 and E580? I use the 530 and I really like it.
I remember some Engel preamps from, I don't know the model numbers. So current Engels, I have no idea. I haven't heard them. I remember there was a single rack space Engel unit back in the 80s or the late 80s, early 90s that actually sounded really cool.
Yeah.
So if it was based upon that at all, that was a cool preamp. I mean, there were some other weird preamps. There was that one that was a single rack space, and then there was Kitty Hawk.
Ooh, yes.
Another one that was a single rack space unit, and
I have a Quattro, and that is like fat and juicy.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, some of them they were cool. They had good ideas. Like when you looked at the schematic later on, like for me, I look at it and like, oh yeah, I see what they were doing. Okay, I get it.
And I have an Engel 530, and I like it. I think it's like a good old metal. It gets into the metal zone really nicely.
Well, here's the thing I wanted to say is, I mean, depending on the style you're into, I mean, these preamps could be anything. So, like for instance, the E530 I borrowed from Nielsen, didn't like it because it wasn't my thing. I mean, if you try to take 2 Filtertrons, you try to play through an amp, you're not going to like it. But if you're into metal, E530, awesome preamp. So it really depends on what you're looking for, on the output.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like it's like I don't care for a rectifier, but there's many people that do. So that's fine. There's lots of people, metal guys that like 6505s. I like that more than a rectifier. But To each his own, depending on what your style of music is.
Have you heard the VHT preamp?
Yes.
I've never heard it.
Which one? The VHT preamp?
Fryette. Yeah, VHT had one. I mean, they have a different thing now, which is like a desktop preamp.
I mean, I love Stevie. I didn't love that preamp, but I do tend to like the Deliverance amp or the stuff he did with Sound City or stuff like that.
The synergy modules are great too. I think the
synergy modules are really killer. Yeah, they're awesome. My god. Yeah, the Pitbull. I mean, like the Ultra Lead and stuff was cool for a metal kind of thing, and the Deliverance module was really cool, and those are cool. The G3, I think it was G3, wasn't it called?
GP3.
GP3. Yeah, I remember when he started developing that way back, like in 1990-ish era, and I remember he had a Soldano preamp, and he was modifying that to get like his ideas together. And some of the stuff I heard way back was killer. But I don't know. I mean I only heard the GP3 a couple times, and I wasn't in love, but I love him. He's awesome.
Yep.
Honestly, the GP3 is one of my top three. So I've got the GP3, I've got the Aguilar 1911, and I've got the Van Wheelen Gainland. Those are the three I'm looking for. Now Nielsen's got my two synergy modules. Mm-hmm. So whether the Ultra Lead or the Deliverance, those are two really awesome preamp modules. Yeah. If you want to go that direction, honestly.
Yeah, no, they're killer. So
yeah.
And they got the Ultra Lead has that little mini graphic EQ on it. That's really super cool. When I first saw that, I'm like going, "Oh, that's cool." It's so tiny, but good luck moving it. But
yeah,
it's a little fun there. But
it's got a peak LED, so when you're overdriving the system.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but I mean, like just like I want to give it a little more top end. Oops, I went too far.
Yeah, I don't worry about overload lights. Tell me as much as you like. I just keep going.
There you
go. We've got a question from Roger Dat. Dave, please speak to Boogie Mark III gain tones. Do they influence you at all?
Absolutely, in no way, shape, or form. I think they stopped having great things after the 2C Plus. It's just my thing. I actually like the Mark I. Thought that was cool.
So there was some question about what Bob Rock was referencing.
And let me preface this. These are just my opinions. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work for you. So you as a player, it's really important that you understand that. This is my just very opinionated opinions. That doesn't mean that a Mark III is not your perfect amp when you play through it. So I've learned this long ago. What's right for me and for you is different.
Yes.
Right.
So I'm not saying that you can't get a good sound out of a Mark III. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. I've been proven wrong so many times over the years with stuff I thought was going to sound like crap, but then when the player played it, it sounded amazing. So no way.
I gotta take a shout out because I lend Nielsen a lot of gear. He makes it sound incredible, way beyond what I can sound. So I'm kind of looking at myself as the average man, and that dude is like godlike.
Thank you, though. Thank you. But thanks for lending me the gear. I appreciate that too. It's just super nice to be able to like hear this stuff and then share it.
I love when I see a video from Nielsen that says, "I borrowed this from Toren."
Yeah, my sugar daddy.
I mean, that's just it. Is the one thing we talked about earlier in the show is, you know, a lot of us just buy gear and sell gear just to try it out, and we don't really have a frame of reference. And I think what Nielsen does that nobody else really does in the YouTube land is that he compares gear, and you can figure out whether A and B sounds better. And that's really valuable, honestly. For all of us that looks at there and Reverb and eBay and tries to buy shit, and that's really what's most important is what really sounds better. What's going to include and what's going to improve what I sound like going forward. And that's awesome. That's awesome. I got to give you
Okay.
There is something we forgot, and someone just reminded me. John McDonald, super chat.
Kasher
Rockmod preamp. Yes, this was a major deal for a minute. During that era that I was doing a bunch of these classic, shall we say, racks.
I remember
the
this.
Kasher Rockmod, mostly the one. Kasher Rockmod 1 was the one. That was the one that like Dan Huff had, and that's the one that the guy that comes to mind right off the top of my head. But there was a guy Al Petrelli that played with Alice Cooper at the time I did a rack with. He had one, and man, pretty much it was just used for its dirty sound. Wasn't used for its clean sound at all, especially the one. And it was a great sounding preamp. Super cool. He later came out with a 2, which had a better clean sound with like a fuller fledged EQ for the clean sound. Not quite as cool as the 1. The 1 was the one. Do you have one of those? Toren?
I have that. Remember, you worked on the switching.
Oh yeah, you have the Rockmod 1, right?
Yeah.
You still have it?
You just pointed out a major hole in my gear.
That's a major faux pas on that one. That was that's a major missing element to the rack thing. You
exposed me. That's
yeah.
I mean, how much more?
Rockmod 1 sounds cool. It's a cool sounding. It's a cool sounding rock preamp.
Yeah, on that notion, I mean, a lot of people ask me questions about what is the best preamp for this? What is the best, effects units for this? What is the best power amp for this? I mean, do you have a list that you can think of off the top of your head that says, hey, this is, if I were to go today and build a rack system, what would I build that with? And that's really, I'm sure a lot of people
that is available today, or
yes, secondary and new market. Because honestly, there aren't that many rack pre's available today on the open market. You've got Synergy.
Well, frankly, I'd probably just go with a Synergy system because I know for a fact that because I worked on so many of the modules. Yeah. I know for a fact that the modules can sound just like the amplifiers.
Oh yeah.
The preamp sections of the amplifiers. Now, what power section you're pairing that with is going to make a thing to that. Oh man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
What power amp do you go with?
Yeah.
Well, essentially in my mind, you have a Synergy power amp, you have the LX from Fryette, you could do the 252 from Fryette because he's still making them.
Yeah.
That's a 252 has always been a favorite. That's a really good EL34 power amp.
Even the power station is fine, right?
Huh?
The power station?
The power station is fine. So the LX is fine. Various heads are fine for it too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know if a lot of people know that if you have a head with a good effects loop, you could plug your preamp into the
I know.
That's true too.
And every amp I've tried of yours, Dave, especially I thought the Twin Sister, that power amp section sounded amazing with preamps.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. That whole Dirty Shirley power section thing sounds unbelievable. You know, the funny thing is, even the little combos we make of the 20 watts. So, like, I have a little combo here sitting on in this room, actually next to me, that I use to. It's a Pink Taco combo, 110 combo, right? Little tiny thing. And I use it to, if I have to say tweak a synergy module or do something like that, you know, I have a Syn 1 here, and I just plug into the effects loop return of that amp. Oof. And holy crap, does it sound good? It sounds so good. I've been even thinking, should I just make like a powered 110 cabinet for effects and stuff, like, you know, to do a wet dry thing? I don't know if I could get it that cheap though, but holy crap, doesn't sound good.
I mean, from a marketing perspective, that's really where we're at. Is how do we go forward from here? We got all this, get a ton of analog gear that was made over the years. That is awesome. I mean, what today replicates that? That's really the eternal question.
I mean, like, okay, what replicates that? So, okay, we're gonna end on some pedals that replicate some of these rack processors pretty well.
Okay,
because, you know, we're gonna go for like 4 hours, if not. We're almost close to 4 hours now. So what pedals replicate some of these classic processors? I mean, for a delay pedal that replicates an SDE3000, well, that's the DD500.
Oof. Okay.
It has that algorithm in it. It gets pretty damn close. It's a really pretty juicy sounding delay pedal. And I'm not saying it's dead spot on, but man, you'd be hard pressed in a system, A being the two, to maybe tell them apart.
Okay.
I mean, maybe a little slightly nudge to the old one, but sounds good. Really good. So for a Lexicon delay sound, hands down for me is the hardwired DL8.
Ooh, okay. I was thinking
DL8 pedal, which they don't make anymore, unfortunately.
Ooh.
Because Digitech's dumb. That thing sounds really juicy and very 42-esque. I'm not saying it's 42, but it has that juicy quality to it.
Awesome.
And it takes high headroom. It takes like a line level loop if you want. Killer sounding delay. For the 2290, well, that's easy. Free the tone, flight time delay. It's like a 2290 in a little box, even with the same graphics almost.
Oh, man.
You have it?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Oh yeah, that's it. And when it lights up, it looks particularly amazing.
I have to get that.
All the numbers.
Oh man, reverb is going to be on fire tomorrow.
Yeah. So with all the numbers, it lights up unbelievably cool. It looks just like a 2290, and it's really easy to program. It's really easy to use, and it has that 3-dimensional juicy quality that we're talking about. And they also make a newer one called the Future Factory, which is more of a modulated delay thing, more of an SDD kind of thing, which is super cool also.
Oh man.
Best reverb's rough. Polara, Digitech Polara, not made anymore. Great plate and halls, killer. Really good decay on the reverb. That's the thing that lacks. Like if you compare like a TC Hall of Fame reverb to the Polara, you're gonna just be like, oh my god, let me put this thing under my car tire, the Hall of Fame, and run it over a few times.
How's the RV500?
Oh man.
It's not bad.
Stuart Rose.
It's not bad. I think it does some of the Boss delay sounds that they've had over the years. It does a little bit of that SRV thing.
Yeah, the reverb one.
Yeah. But they have, I mean, other than the SRV, they haven't been overly known for the reverbs.
It's pretty good though. Overall, it's pretty good though. In my opinion, it's stacked up to like the Strymon. It's a little different. It's a little more hi-fi and shiny, where the Strymon's like warm and gooey.
Yeah. And then the hardwire reverbs also, RV7, I think, and they made a custom one for someone, I can't remember, that was called the can't remember either. Those are really good. They sound awesome. The same lineage of the Polara later. So and a nice honorable mention though to the Obscura delay that Digitech made too. That was this little single delay. It didn't do what the DL8 did, but it does some cool altered grungier delay sounds, and it was cool. Also reverb, the new neighbor. I think that's how you say it, right?
The new neighbor?
New neighbor.
Nunenberg.
Like new burger, new neighbor.
I've heard new neighbor.
New neighbor, I think is the. I'm not sure that was the best choice for a name because people can't pronounce it, but
he makes a chorus pedal that's a really good version of. It's got micro pitch and it has sort of like a Dynatronic, the tri-stereo chorus, like in one patch and individuals. It's really good.
They do super good verbs and they do super good pedals. I mean, they do a good job. They're well thought out and they sound great. You can go on with this forever.
Oh, yeah.
How many DD sonic maximizers did you put into racks, Dave?
Not too many. But if a guy was going for a metal thing, definitely it went in there.
About
it's like instant metal. It's like literally instant scoop and bright and cut and like boom, done.
Yeah.
You know.
So if I
kind of shuddered to think, whenever EQs went in, like even graphic EQs and things, and those, I was like, oh no, they're gonna screw it up. There's a way to use things in moderation that is cool, and then there's a way to go too far and make it sound like crap.
Ooh.
Them fuzzy monster.
Oh yeah, Cantrell mod and the Bogner fish. I know about that.
Wait.
Man, the funny thing is that the super high gain, man, they changed the what's the channel? What's that channel? Bottom channel there?
The shark or the
shark channel.
Yeah.
They changed that into like a super high gain thing that he did way back for him. The funny thing is, I don't know if he actually used that channel all that much in the end. I think he was using other channels more. At least when I did his rack back then, it was, for when I first did his rack, it was the Bogner Fish preamp, the IntelliVerb, and the Moss Valve power amp. Yeah. And later that shifted to a Boogie power amp, but I think maybe there might have been a VHT one in there too at some point.
Yeah. I mean,
and we did something interesting. I remember him specifically being in when we were selling him this stuff, and he was trying it. He was in the demo room of Andy Brower making music, and Lane Staley was there with him. And he's trying this stuff. I didn't even know who the fuck he is at the time. You know what I mean? and he's trying this stuff, and they decide on this, and so he decides on that rig with the Moss valve 500, the bigger one. And at the time, we had one cabinet in the room that was vintage 30s and one that was greenbacks. So that's what we went with, because that's what he was hearing. He was hearing a greenback cab and a vintage 30 cab. Mm-hmm. So, and he liked that blend of the two. So that's how that all came about. So we'll fast forward this years later. He has, gone through a million kind of rig incarnations over the years, and I come back into the fold again. And this was for when they first got back together with Black Gives Way to Blue record. Awesome. And I come back into the fold again because a sound guy that I had worked with before was doing sound, Tom Abraham, for them. And he brought me back into the fold again and wanted me to do the rig again. So I'm like, well, we used to do this with you. When I did your rig back then, we had one cabinet that was greenbacks and one that was vintage 30s. So we revisited that all over again. And how the new rig came about, he had one amp that was cleaner and one amp that was more distorted. At the time, it wasn't my amps. It was a Bogner Uberschall and a Bogner, what's the line 6 amp that he did with Bogner?
Alchemist.
Yeah. It was an Alchemist and believe it or not, it was an Alchemist and a Uberschall. Alchemist, not so great, but we revisited those cabinets, and then later it was one of my amps and the Uberschall, and then it was two of my amps. One was set cleaner and one was heavier. The heavier one went through the vintage 30s. The cleaner one went through the greenbacks.
Wow.
And so it was all that same idea, just revisited again. Yeah. Super cool. And that's what he still uses today now. Two of my amps, two of his amps now, signature models, and one is the gainier one and one is the cleaner one.
Wow.
And the gainier one has effects on it and the cleaner one doesn't.
Right.
Well,
delay.
I told Rubber Baker earlier this week that if he ever sells one of those Bogner fishes that is modified, I am breaking all the piggy banks to get it. So let that be known. It'll be like, all right. Nielsen and I will be fighting it out for the Bogner fish that is Cantrell's.
That's awesome. John McDonald, thanks for the super chat. Dave, build a rack with dual Dirty Shirley power amps, and I'll buy two. Ooh. Actually, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Two rectifiers and everything. Fun.
I think we've actually exhausted all the questions,
dude. I mean, if we haven't, I'm sorry. Exactly. I don't think we can go any further.
We've exhausted. The guy asking about Dave fixing his AMS. You don't fix digital.
No AMS. I have guys that do that, but maybe AMS. That might be a little weird. But yeah, I know a couple guys.
There was one guy earlier in the chat. I don't remember his name, but he was talking about the Groove Tubes trio. What are your thoughts on the Groove Tubes trio?
We already did that.
Well, we did it clean. I thought was pretty good, but okay.
No, we already said that. We already talked about it.
Okay.
You might have missed that. There was a block.
You might have missed that in our talk here.
All right, no problem. I think we've covered all the questions. We've gone 3 hours and 48 minutes. We still have 301 people watching, which is fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Watch us be dumb and geeky on the air.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I actually wish I could have read. I'm sorry, I didn't read almost any comments here. So if we miss stuff, feel free to email us, and I'll answer it.
Yeah.
Because it was too talking intensive to sit there and stare at the chat. Sometimes I get a break here, but I didn't get any break this time.
You were very talkative.
There was a lot of
No
gear.
break for me.
Email me at tonetalkmark@gmail.com. If we missed any questions, I'll send it to Dave and we'll make sure we get answered. Or over to Michael Nielsen and Michael Toren. I think I've gotten to all the super chats, but if I missed any, I do apologize. I promise I will get back to you. Email me, and let me know if I missed your question. My voice is going, so it's a good time probably to end.
Oh my God! Wait! This is a good one. I gotta say this as a closing thing.
Okay.
Deja Blue. So he has a little saying here. Her name was Dirty Shirley. She has a pink taco, and her hairy brown eye is only seen by her twin sister Betty.
I like it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
And on that note,
Oh, who we lose? We lost Dave.
We lost Dave.
He just bailed.
On that note, he quit. He clicked the button.
He quit.
I'm out.
Done. He'll be back. What's going on next show? Abraxas asks. So while we're waiting for David to come back, the next show, there he is.
maybe there I am.
There you are.
Oh, now I'm in a different spot.
Yeah, you've changed spots.
Sorry. Again, that for some reason, if I go over in the comments and move my mouse around a bunch and like scroll, occasionally it kicks me off. Always.
I'm going to look into getting you as a second moderator, see how that works.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to do that with StreamYard. So we're working on several new guests that are coming up next on next shows. We got thinking about Scott Ian, Gilby Clark, I forget Phil, I think from Solo Dallas. We're working on Mad Professor Pedals. We've got a lot of people coming up.
I sent many more requests out today. We'll see how they come back.
Yep, like you mentioned, Gilby Clark.
Gilby's in. We just got to schedule him. No one else is in yet that I saw. I sent very many out, and I'm surprised I haven't seen more back yet. But
I'm sure we'll get more. So we're going to take about a 3-week break between shows, between now and the next show. But we'll be back, promise. And I'll send out. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Just look up Tone Talk on any of these platforms and you'll find us and you can see the update on when the next show is going to be. I think Mark is more thorough drunk. He seems to be nailing all the points. I'm nailing all the points. Check out Sweetwater. And I want to thank Michael Nielsen and Michael Toren. You guys are so fantastic. Love all your content. Love all the stuff you guys produce, and obviously the collection you guys have amassed. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Very welcome.
That was fun.
Very welcome.
Everybody in the chat, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back soon. All right. You guys hang on,
I guess.
Yep.
Talk
to you guys later. Have a great weekend.